Good evening. My name is Jerry Cochran. I'd like to call the City of Pasco Planning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone in attendance tonight this evening and ask you to join me. Let's start by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To begin tonight's meeting, I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Rosa Torres. Mitchell Moffitt.
Present.
Paul Mendez, excused. Kim Larriman.
Present.
Abel Campos.
Present.
Dana Crutchfield, excused. Rachel Teal, excused. Jay Hendler.
Present.
Jerry Cochran.
Present.
Mr. Chair, there are 6 members present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. The Planning Commission is an advisory board made up of volunteers appointed by the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide recommendations to the City Council regarding changes to the city's comprehensive plan, land use updates, block grant allocations, and zoning code. The Planning Commission is tasked with considering the long-term growth and development of the community, the impact of land use decisions on the community, livability, economic opportunity, housing affordability, public services, and the environment. I'd like to remind the audience that tonight's proceedings are being broadcast live on the City of Pasco's Facebook page and on Spectrum Charter Cable PSC Channel 191, and will be rebroadcast several times during the next month. The meeting will also be recorded, so you can watch it on the City of Pasco's website, which is pasco-wa.gov. You can click on the video on demand link and make your selection of the meeting you want to watch there. There should be also copies of tonight's agenda on the back table so you follow along with the meeting. And at this time, I'd like to ask everyone to silence their cell phones to prevent interruptions during the meeting. For those that are present this evening that are speaking, and when you're given the opportunity to address the commission, please come forward to the podium and turn on the microphone and speak clearly into the microphone, and also state your name and city of address for our records. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I need to remind the audience and the Planning Commission that Washington state law requires public meetings like the one being held this evening not only to be fair, but to also appear to be fair. In addition, Washington state law prohibits Planning Commission members from participating in discussions or decisions in which the member may have a direct interest or may be either benefited or harmed by the Planning Commission's decision. An objection to any Planning Commission member hearing any matter on tonight's agenda needs to be aired at this time, or it will be waived. First, are there any Planning Commission members who have a declaration at this time regarding any of the items on the agenda? I will note, it won't be relevant for tonight, but I am a board member on one of the applicants, so I will recuse myself from voting next month when we actually do the voting. But for tonight's purposes, we're just hearing the applicants, so I think we're okay. Any other declarations? All right. Second, is there anyone in the audience who this evening who would object to any of the Planning Commission members hearing any of the items on the agenda? Let the record show there were no declarations. We as the Planning Commission value and need your input. It helps us to understand issues more clearly and make better recommendations to City Council. Furthermore, in many cases, your input here at this Planning Commission meeting is your only opportunity to get your facts and opinions placed into the record, the official record of this, that the City Council will use to make its decisions. I encourage you to take full advantage of the opportunity. To start off tonight, the item on the agenda, first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from Thursday, June 15th, 2023. These meeting minutes were mailed out and provided to the commissioners ahead of time. I trust you had an opportunity to take a look at them. I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes, or if there are any discussions or questions.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 15th meeting.
Second.
Either one.
Moved by Commissioner Campos and seconded by Commissioner Torres. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Let the record show that meeting minutes were unanimously approved. My microphone's off. See, I told everybody else to turn their microphone off, and I messed mine up. So we'll start off tonight with our public hearings. The first item is the 2024 Community Development Block Grant Allocation, and I think we'll start off with Ms. Webb.
Good evening, Planning Commission. First tonight, I'll be discussing Master File BGAP 2023-003, the 2024 CDBG Work Plan. I would like to start off with the overview intent of the Community Development Block Grant Program from HUD. The Community Development Block Grant Program provides annual grants on a formula basis to states, cities, and counties to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and suitable living environments, and by expanding economic opportunities principally for low to moderate income parties. On the next slide. Oh, no, you're already there, sorry. The outline for the grant program is HUD approves the 5-year consolidated plan, which is the goals and strategies for the funding for the next 5 years. This was done in 2020, so we have until 2024. Then each year of the consolidated plan, we submit an annual action plan, which is the basis for carrying out the annual goals and activities for each program. At the end of the fiscal year, we submit the Consolidated Annual Plan Evaluation Report, also known as the CAPER, to evaluate the annual action plan performance. Citizen participation is mandatory and encouraged throughout the process with public comment periods and public hearings. Next slide. The Consolidated Plan 2020 through 2024 goals are increase and preserve affordable housing. This is done through down payment assistance and owner-occupied rehabs as well as code enforcement. Community development, community, neighborhood, and economic development. This is done through facades, public works, and facility projects. Examples was the Penis Park project. Homeless interventions and public services. This is done through activities like the YMCA and the Arc of Tri-Cities. Next slide. This is an estimate of the available funds based on the entitlement total that we received for 2023. CDBG entitlement was $651,474. Prior year funds and program income will be $65,000. Program income is received from payoffs of CDBG rehab loans. Last year we actually did receive a lot of payoff loans, but I think that was in turn to the COVID housing market, and so a lot of people were refinancing their house and they were having to pay off their loans. We do not see that probably going this year forward, so that's why we put the program income pretty low this year. Available for funding in 2024 is only going to be $716,000. We received 21 proposals for funding totaling $2.5 million. So with an estimated of $716,000, we have a deficit of 1.7. This is a percentage breakdown by the project type, which lines up with the consolidated plan goals. So you can see on there where some of the funding, what people are asking for. This slide is a little small. This is the consolidated plan goal summary information by year with the percentage of what has been spent to meet 100% of the goal by 2024. It may look like some of the years we funded more in one activity than the others, but this isn't the case. These dollar amounts are based on when the draws are done for the project. So for instance, in 2022, we did 10 rehab projects, but some of the funding was from prior years like 2016. So as you can see, well, that's why I gave you guys a copy of the PowerPoint. And the increase and preserve affordable housing, we're at 77%. But when they did the consolidated plan, they did only budget $551,000 for it. So we spent almost half of that last year, so doing projects. Next slide. This is an estimate of what was spent in Kennewick and Richland based on the consolidated goals. While each city receives its own CDBG funds, the consolidated plan is created as one plan for all 3 cities since we are a consortium with our home funds. So we all had the same goals, and basically, as you can see from the previous slide, most of our projects, it looks like we're funding a lot of the community, neighborhood and economic development projects. Next slide. So this is a timeline of what the path forward is. So the application deadline was May 26th. Obviously, you guys are hearing from the applicants tonight. August 17th, you guys will take action. And also on August 17th is the end of the public comment period for the annual action plan for 2024. And then on August 28th, we're going to take it to city council workshop. September 5th, the council will take action, and then we will update our allocations for final submission to HUD. So with that, we are going to be hearing from the applicants tonight. I think next is the, PowerPoint for public service. So Fida, if you want to come up for Public Works.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Fida Garcia. I am an engineer 1 for the city of Pasco. I've been here for the past 4 years, and I am also the project manager for the Lewis Street Corridor 2nd to 5th Avenue Improvements Project. So my goal for today is to kindly just reintroduce the project because I know you probably have heard it before, and I also want to update you on the current progress. So, next slide. So the city of Pasco is currently actively working on improving the neighborhood business district. And one of the recently completed projects is the Peanuts Park Plaza, as seen on the left side of the screen, which hosts many festivals and events in the local farmers market. These events are often very diverse, very culturally rich, and all-inclusive. Additionally, on the right side of the screen is the, and on the east end of the corridor is the Lewis Street overpass that is currently under construction. And it's funded federally, state, and locally. So the volume of traffic that this project is going to generate is actually highly important for the downtown development. Lewis Street Corridor is also aligned with many historical buildings, many connections to the Columbia River, affordable living, and small businesses. So this is a bigger and better picture of the Peanuts Park Plaza. And I want to highlight that our goal for this project is to cohesively connect all projects and leverage those investments already made on the previous projects. This is the Lewis Street overpass, currently under construction, that ties this project at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Lewis Street. This project will also enhance accessibility and multimodal transportation. These are the renderings for what the overpass will look like when finished. This is a project that will also help set the tone for a safer, cleaner, and more welcoming downtown. So the downtown master plan was completed and adopted in early 2023 and defines the Lewis Street road configuration between 2nd to 5th Avenue. This is the cross-section that was received recently by our design team that matches what the downtown Pasco master plan depicts. The project will consist of a larger and wider sidewalk for business and festival uses, ADA accessible sidewalks and ramps, bulb outs, and pedestrian and festival lighting. As seen on the cross-section below, you can see there are 21-foot sidewalks on both sides, on the north and south side. There are 8-foot curb bulb outs or parking lanes and 11-foot travel lanes. These are the 30% renderings that we have received from our design team and what we hope our project will look like when complete. The dense street grid is one of downtown's strong assets in providing access to local businesses, parking, loading, and opportunities for social interaction and community building. Also included in this project is a new cohesive site furnishing package, an urban streetscape comprised of raised planters, pavers, benches, and trash receptacles. And as mentioned before, these will connect aesthetically to the Peanuts Park and the overpass project. Now, one of the most important items highlighted in the downtown master plan is the raised mid-block crossing directly in front of Peanuts Park that ties to the Peanuts Park North. Another fun feature demonstrated here are the banners that could be hung from festival lighting poles, and these can essentially advertise businesses, events, and the city's logo. An option our design team has also provided us with is continuing the diagonal pattern seen at the bottom left corner, tying Peanuts Park again to Peanuts Park North. Planters can also be seen, providing the corridor with a colorful aesthetic. Now, this is the detailed breakdown of the current funding received and planned for the project. We've secured about $1.7 million thus far and are requesting about $851,000 in this application. We realize that the number is higher than what is available, but we are hopeful we will receive any amount, and it will help the project continue forward. The preliminary 30% estimate for construction is currently $6.1 million, making the total cost for the project approximately $8.8 million. We are actively also applying for other grant funding, eligible grant funding, and are awarded, and any awarded funds will be greatly appreciated. That is all for me. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I just got one question. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really excellent. As far as the layout of the sidewalks getting bigger and everything, I know that a while ago we sent out to the community surveys based on, we had several options of that. Was that the winner, or was it based off of what they feel like that was probably best for our city?
Yes, that was after a lot of input from our community and what was actually depicted on the downtown master plan, which had a lot of input from the community.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you again for an excellent presentation. Especially the graphics really help bring that vision to life. So thank you for putting that forward. And the question I have for you is, when is the estimate timeline to be done with the Lewis Street overpass?
So we're hoping to have design completed by the end of this year or early next year. And hopefully if we get funding, we can start construction next year.
Can you talk a little bit more about how the overpass project and this project will kind of connect, and what does that look like in that, where the connection's going to be?
Yeah. So the Lewis Street overpass will run from Oregon Avenue to 2nd Avenue. And at the intersection of 2nd Avenue to 5th Avenue is our project, which is from 2nd to 5th. And then Peanuts Park is just adjacent, just south of Lewis Street and 4th.
Okay, any other questions for this applicant? Do we have anybody on the phone? We don't have anybody on the phone. Okay. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you for your time.
Next, we're going to have Jessica come up.
Hello, Commission. I'm Jessica Bracken. I'm the Development Services Lead with the CED Department. I'm going to present on two applications. The first one is for sidewalk improvements for ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, to bring them up to the most current set of standards, which are the 2010 standards. It is a requirement that all public right-of-way meet the ADA standards, and currently we do have inventory that does not. There's pretty much two ways that sidewalk could not meet ADA standards. One would be it was built before the standards were adopted and placed and enforced, or before they were updated. And then also sidewalks after being installed, can become out of compliance with ADA standards through disrepair or encroachments, or usually those are the two main categories that would require. We're requesting for this project $75,000, and that would be not to actually construct new facilities, but to develop an ADA transition plan. That one was being started before, and it was to take that further ahead. The previous efforts focused a little bit on the inventory of necessary improvements, and that would need to be updated. It was several years ago, just to make sure that we've captured the entire inventory. And then these are all partial stipulations of a plan that is outlined within the Title II. For ADA, you would have to designate an official that would be responsible for implementing the plan and carrying it forward. It would determine timelines and priorities of where, and once the inventory is created, of what needs to be done and how soon, with an overall timeline goal to be in compliance by a certain year. It would, of course, prioritize different projects and coordinate with planned projects. So if we know that we're going to do different improvements, some that we've seen recently, like the Sylvester Street updates, and we know that that's going to be all wrapped up in one, we can focus efforts on other places, things like that, to make sure we're utilizing resources as best we can. And it'll determine yearly funding allocations to be able to actually go and improve these projects. And then of course, construct the project and then monitor the progress. Are we keeping up with our overall timeline goals, et cetera? So this money is to actually develop this plan. So it's a very short presentation, but that's what the goal is for that one. If there's any questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Commissioners?
So Commissioner Moffitt here. So are we required as a city to update all crossings to meet ADA requirements? And if so, what is the timeline that's given?
Yes. So the overall answer is yes, that we are required to have all of our facilities brought up to ADA. There's not a strict timeline given, but there is the need to have a plan in place and to identify the timeline that we wish to get in compliance by and a path to get there. So because it varies, it's a federal requirement, it varies so much from city to city. There's not a particular date required because some cities have a lot more out of compliance than others. Obviously, there's lots of cities that are huge that were built before a certain time that have would have a very heavy lift. So it's flexible in terms, but you have to develop a plan to become under compliance.
I understand. That was my thinking. That some of these larger cities,
Right.
obviously larger than us, this is an unsurmountable obstacle for them, I'm sure, to bring things up that they're older and in place already. So we're just trying to get closer to where we should be,
Right.
but this is not going to get us where we should be.
Mm-hmm. And there's provisions in place with retrofits and that could allow flexibility. Sometimes it's often in very tight right-of-ways or where there's maybe other structures that could prevent you from meeting total compliance. There's some flexibility that's built into there, but that's part of what the plan would adopt too. Would take a look at what, if we're places that we just can't make that work, or there's drainage issues that would cause a bigger safety threat, or there's definitely leeway that it maybe the end goal wouldn't be 100% compliance, but you are meeting the intent of the regulation.
I understand. And then just kind of a question that I see. Some intersections have, for example, the blind, they have the push the button and you can hear the beeps or something, and some don't. Is there an ADA requirement that says all will be that way at one time, or is there an ADA requirement that says a certain percentage, or what is that?
There's different warrants, and it's very detailed on what's included and not included. And ADA is often thought about for physical disabilities. you're like walking disabilities, but you're very correct. It includes audible disabilities, vision disabilities, and things. And part of that is included with the physical structure. Part of it's included with signage. The plan would there's different warrants for different types of intersections of what you require for which. If some do require the beacon that actually makes audible noise that people can understand or not. It depends on a lot of parameters of which level is required.
I understand. So there are requirements to that. It's just not a city going, oh, let's put an audible here and not here type thing. Okay, I understand. That's great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I have a question regarding, on your application, question number 4, projects will be ranked according to the attached allocation policy. I don't understand how this is related or as earmarked for a low priority.
Yeah. Oh,
So please go ahead and share out.
I didn't know if I cut you off there. Yes, so we went through the ranking process, and a part of it is to do with goal number 2, which is improve community infrastructure, public facilities, and local economies. And part of it would be in that prioritization of the plan is that a lot of the areas that are older are fit into some of those categories, and it's making sure that they're up to date and that they're meeting facilities that, so it applies to those individual groups that are listed as part of the program.
But for clarity, there's a rubric for determining, you don't just like say, oh, I think it's a rubric for determining the priority, yeah. So it's not something you guys are just arbitrarily marking, it's
Right.
a rubric you're going through. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
For that transition plan, is there a specific area of the city that you're focusing on, or you're looking at the whole scope of the whole city?
It would look at the whole city as the plan because that is the requirement. But with the previous inventory that was done, I think it was almost 10 years ago, and there's been improvements in then, so that's part of the update. But it does target certain neighborhoods just naturally that could particularly benefit from it.
Okay, thank you.
I will like to mention that I appreciate that the sidewalks that are, or the curb cutouts that are going in are straight across on the crosswalk, not diagonal. My daughter broke her leg in March, and we were visiting a certain city, and all their new ones were diagonal. So we're pushing her wheelchair across traffic within the crosswalk. So thank you.
Any other questions? And otherwise we'll move on to your second.
Oh, I just
Oh,
have
you
one
go
more
ahead.
question.
sorry.
Just really quick. If you don't get this funding to update the plan, is there something that you can keep moving forward with, or is it does this stop progress on getting more of these done?
Right. We will have to pursue funding in other locations and reallocate from either, our budget because it is something that needs to move forward.
Okay.
I think I can advance it. I can. So the second application from our department is for neighborhood traffic management. So speeding has been a repeated and identified concern by Pasco residences, and their neighborhood traffic management is a method to mitigate that. And so this is also not to put physical things in place, but to develop a plan that would help us do that, identify where these could be necessary, and have an actual program to implement these, which we don't currently have. So neighborhood traffic calming measures are physical elements that can slow the tendency to speed for actual vehicles, and in some cases potentially reduce volumes. They're often implemented and targeted in residential neighborhoods on what we like to call neighborhood collectors, which are more or less through streets, through neighborhoods. And often the speeding can occur where different classifications, higher classifications of roads that are supposed to be handling traffic become overly congested, and then people will alter their route through different neighborhoods. And because they connect and there's not as much traffic, they're inclined to speed. So it's adjusting the built environment in several different ways, which I'll talk about them briefly, some of the different measures. Some are more applicable in different scenarios than others to discourage speeding. And it's usually done by either truly encroaching on a travel way or perceiving an encroachment on a travel way. So when someone perceives their travel way to be more narrow or have intervals of encroachment, they're much less likely to speed. So there's kind of two things that go along with speeding. It's the posted limit and what you feel naturally comfortable in driving. And often we see that those aren't compatible. The posted limit says one thing, but the natural inclination is to drive faster in it because of the design. So these are mitigation measures that could be identified. I list a bunch of them, but they all kind of fall into that category. Sometimes they can be done with actual physical things. Sometimes they can be done with striping. There's different ways to implement them. But their goals are to increase safety for all right-of-way users. Obviously, that would include the vehicles that are traveling, bikes and pedestrians, anyone that isn't within the right-of-way. Create a more comfortable environment for bikes and peds, which also encourages healthier, low-cost transportation options to a broader range of Pasco residents. A lot of reasons why someone would choose not to walk or bike is for safety concerns. So if we reduce some of these safety concerns, we can encourage that more to those that might be inclined to walk or bike. And it also can help promote. Oh, and I guess I would like to note that that's particularly beneficial for lower income residents and residents with disabilities. Again, if you fall into either of those two categories, it gives you more options and it allows you to feel safer in the right of way and therefore more inclined to use it. In general, too, places that have a more robust and lively bike and ped environment will promote overall resiliency and sustainability in neighborhoods. People like to be there, people like to interact there, people want to stay there, and it helps keep neighborhoods looking good for longer. People were more invested in them. And I already mentioned that usually the roads that we would look at would be neighborhood collectors in residential zones. So I wanted to give some background on that because obviously neighborhood traffic calming mechanisms are not something that are always readily. We've heard about ADA usually a lot. You don't always hear about those. So this one is requesting $100,000 and it would be to develop the program for this. We've started to look into this. This strategy also came from our TSMP that was adopted end of 2022, early 2023. I can't remember the date exactly. This would develop guidelines on which that these strategies to identify which strategies are best for Pasco and when. Sometimes, one strategy is better or more applicable than others. It would definitely include input from service maintenance and also our emergency responders. Sometimes there's places where vertical deflections are not as applicable for those types of reasons. And overall, it would identify at least two mechanisms for getting something like this in place. One would be a community-led mechanism. If you think your neighborhood could benefit from one of these, we would define a process that you could bring that to our attention. It may include, a form or a petition of a certain number of the neighborhood, etc. And it would obviously include meetings. There would be a warrant evaluation to make sure it is something that would actually benefit. And that it would be a cost evaluation. There would, of course, be design, construction, and then a follow-up evaluation to see if it actually did improve the situation. And then the second mechanism is for new developments, and that would have a threshold determination in the development review process that if the proposed development triggered a certain amount of projected through trips, that design mitigations would be incorporated. So it's really to kind of define that process, which we don't have now as part of our review or as a part of a mechanism for citizens to formally request something like this. So again, I'll take questions if there are any. Yep.
Anyone have questions? I had a question. I mean, it's kind of, how does the street connectivity issue that we're working on interplay with this? Because it seems like the more we create street connectivity, the more we create this problem. And so is there a coordination between those two types of programs where you say, well, we're going to go create more connectivity in either new or existing developments, but then we're also going to need to mitigate this kind of problem? Is there a coordination between those two kinds of programs?
Yes, so they are interrelated, especially if it's only in certain spots and not all throughout the city. If there's kind of uniform connectivity, you don't have as much of a problem. But the connectivity does multiple good things, but also it can encourage speeding. And it's not necessarily the volumes we're trying to mitigate, it's the speeding tendency. So it's not necessarily a capacity issue or through traffic, but they are interconnected. You're very correct. I don't know if I explained that properly.
Yeah, because I could see them being either counter to each other or, just have to be considering each other because, all right, well, I'm creating this awesome connectivity and then I'm going to have to pay for more speed bumps, right? And so you have to, I guess that was just my only thought about this. And then last question, this one and the one before, when you say you want to develop a plan or a program, is that typically just staff funding and staff time to do that, or is it consultants or a little bit of both?
Probably both.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, it sounds like that's all the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have any more presentations like that. Next, we're going to hear from Melissa and Jeff from the YMCA of Greater Tri-Cities.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Ransom, and I'm here today with Jeff Morrow. We are representatives of the Board of Trustees of the YMCA of Greater Tri-Cities. Bit of a mouthful. Steve Howland, our CEO, unfortunately he can't be here today. He's representing the Y on business, but we're pleased to present our application for the Community Development Block Grant funds for you today. As a lifelong Pasco resident, I also want to say I'm proud of the work that Pasco is doing and continues to do to support these partnerships and these other worthy applicants that you're going to hear from tonight. One of the partnerships, many of you may be familiar with it, but it's what we're here today for, is the Martin Luther King Jr. Center in East Pasco. We're requesting $50,000. This is an increase from the prior year. And I'm not sure how much you know, so forgive me if I am telling you something you already know. This is a drop-in center. We charge $10 a year for an annual membership, $2 a day for drop-in, for kids to come in. We have a homework center. There's a game room, a weight room, a gym. One of the main programs that we perform there, and Jeff will tell you more about this in a little bit, competitive soccer. This is elite soccer, I'm telling you. The cost that we raise through membership, it does not offset the cost of offering these programs. We, the YMCA, we support this with revenue we generate in other programs like childcare and also through donations from citizens in these partnerships with the City of Pasco. We believe also that sport is the great equalizer. Kids should not be turned away because of a lack of ability to pay. Through this partnership and these grants, we're able to keep the costs down and allow more children to participate. And it's not just soccer. I'm telling you, these programs, they change lives. They're making a difference.
Okay. And I wanted to note that Melissa and I are the two most recent past presidents of the Y boards. And so we've been on, I've been there since 2007. You've been there longer. So we believe very strongly in these programs. And we have worked in cooperation with the City of Pasco for 35 years now at the King Center, and so we want to keep doing that. We were talking about the numbers. So we're still recovering from COVID. The pre-COVID numbers for childcare, daycare, those have not been equaled at this point, but soccer is on its way back, and the numbers that we have, we were 400 kids strong in this program over here pre-COVID. In 2021, we were averaging 60 kids a season. In 2022, it got up to 225. And this year, we've had 3 seasons, and so far they're averaging 400. So we're back there. And much of this grant that we're looking for is going to take care of staff and officiating and supplies. The officiating costs nowadays are the numbers are going up, and it's hard to find good officials. And so it's going to allow the program to go. We're also adding younger soccer players, so we're getting more of those kids in. And the thing about the King Center that we realized the last reporting quarter, the Y was estimating that we were going to see 415 kids come through that quarter, and it ended up being over 1,106 is what they. So it's a very important place for us, that's for sure. And one of the things I wanted to do was I reached out to Pasco boys soccer coach Matt Potter the other night because I wanted to know if it was just us, if we were the ones saying, yeah, you know, this is very important, but if other people do. And so he sent me back a message, and I'd like to read that. He says, I believe almost all of our guys grew up playing at the Y. I tell any and all that it is the best place to play soccer in the state for kids. It's affordable, and the level of play continues to amaze me. In most areas, youth sports get prohibitively expensive to play at a high level. The Pasco Y is a rare exception. I would put kids from our Y up against anyone their age. Now, we're talking about competition there. But this is the more important part of this whole thing. Most importantly, though, I believe it creates a bond for the kids and the community. They all know each other, grow and learn together, and continue to be friends into adulthood. It does the same for the adults packing the stands every weekend. They get to know one another, and many make a day of just watching the games, whether they have kids playing or not. So, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for being here. Questions from the commissioners?
I got a question. We saw on the application that you had said that you serve about 2,700 residents. What's the number been like in previous years? Have you seen an increase? You mentioned soccer a little bit, but overall, have you seen an increase even as a whole program?
Yes, I think we have. It's the numbers a few years back. I don't think were as big as that, but it's getting bigger.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Moffett here. So, as I read through your application, I just have a few questions. Part of it's just clarification. So I noticed that there it says number of elderly clients is 0, and number of disabled clients is 0. You're not shutting your doors to them.
No.
They're not coming in.
They're just not coming
right.
in.
They're
Yeah.
not coming in, or we're not tracking it. I don't think the disability question is something we're tracking with those kids.
I understand. Yeah. But that might be something would be very valuable to certain people that are,
Sure.
approving these things. And then the other thing, the Y, I remember the Y back when I was a child too, so very, very great organization. But when that's when I see that it seems like it's more, what you're saying is more for the kids, right? Which is very, very important. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's what's keeping, programs like yours is what's keeping the drug problem down a little bit, and and it affects that, and it gives kids something to do. But do you have any programs that allow adults to do something? Is there any adult programs you have that you offer? Because when I was a child, I remember walking into a Y, and there were people of all ages in there, from 70s on down. So
One of our biggest problems is we don't have a physical building like other cities do, like Walla Walla does, Spokane, Yakima. So that's where we're kind of bouncing around the Tri-Cities. We have facilities in Richland, in Kennewick, Pasco, and so it's more catered to the youth right now. That's one of our goals as the years go by, and we want to get a bigger building and be able to have more things for adults.
I understand. Thank you.
Looks like no further questions. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're gonna hear from Donna. She's with the ARC of Tri-Cities.
Can you hear me? Okay, well, I'm Donna Tracy, and this is Brandon Jones. And Brandon is a City of Pasco resident, so am I, 30 years. And I brought Brandon because he is a consumer of the Arc of Tri-City Services. He's been growing up. Brandon, what are you doing right now at the Arc?
The arc with you,
Yeah.
me, my mom, and Igor.
Okay, lots of friends, right?
Yes.
Okay, but right now we're doing a summer camp. You go
Yes.
swimming every day, right?
Yes.
And how old are you, Brandon?
20.
20 years old. So Brandon's been growing up with us, which is the norm. We usually get referrals ages 2, and we all kind of grow old together. I have a daughter, Tiffany, and Jeff moved in with me. I think you met him last year. And the ARC and these dollars help us be able to provide services to individuals with developmental disabilities. We target adults because then we don't have to do those horrendous paperwork you guys have to do for children. You know what I'm saying? Even though we're serving 221 individuals in our ages 7 to 21 summer camp for 8 weeks, and we're also serving 50 for the juniors ages 2 to 7. And that's happening right now, helping families. We don't have a child care license because a lot of our service deliveries, child care has all these restrictions, and we want to have fun. And they come and look at facilities, and they come and look at your light bulbs, and we don't want to worry about that. The ARCs worked hard. Our building was fully paid for 2 months we got into that. I don't know if you know our building in Richland, but we saved our money. We got enough grants because we never wanted to spend dollars on more. We wanted to serve. Half our workforce in our summer camp and in our service delivery system are volunteers. We have 2,000 volunteers who donate their time to come make it possible. We have programs, for example, our program that Jeff's always in. That's a day program where I can go to work and other parents can too. It's only $65 a month. It allows me to work. If the bus comes, he's waiting eagerly for it. Yeah, and he has his lunch and he goes off and he's with his friends and participating. And it's a highlight of his life. He loves getting away from me and having access to that. These dollars help us to scholarship, continue offering low cost, because our families, when you're with the individual throughout their life, our child care needs do not stop at 12. They are throughout our life. We change our lives. We reduce our workforce. If you're a single parent, it's extremely tough providing 24-hour care to your child. The ARC's a partner, and we have lots of parents involved. We're kind of a community. Once you get involved, and we try to invite more and more and access. Seattle Children's refers to us. Local hospitals, we get referrals all the time, and we're training parents and trying to help them access as much as the community, but the ARC's a safety net. We also, too, in this program, because we meet so many families, some are in crisis, and we also have a group of parents that help support those in crisis. We help take care of each other's children. We offer respite and give breaks. When somebody has to go to the hospital, they can call somebody and ask for help. And we know how to take care of because we live it. So it's creating a community within our community that supports. Appreciate Pasco's support. You helped us start Special Olympics years ago by the parents. And matter of fact, Brandon, what sports are you in?
Swimming and marching and the whole this weekend.
Okay, so he's doing golf this weekend. And then he does marching, and that's track and field. And you got medals this year, didn't you? And helped us bring Special Olympics, which is just another thing of being able to see the value of sports, building confidence and skill sets. Appreciate your partnership. I've been rambling on. But that's why we come and ask you guys for help. And you guys get a lot of requests, and I really feel bad for you. But I feel confident that you understand the need that our families have for us. Do you have any questions?
Commissioners?
You know, we're located at 1455 Fowler. You know the old movie theater place that used to be over there? Okay, you go towards the mall. Okay, if you go there over the Blue Bridge, head towards the mall, take the exit for the mall exit, turn right, and then on Fowler Street, turn left. Instead of cash and carry, turn left. And we're a big building. It looks kind of modern, angled. It cost us $3.8 million, and we had it fully funded, honestly, 2 months after it was paid for. We saved up our dollars. We recruited. We got Jerome Delvin to help us. And the city of Pasco helped us. All the cities came together, and we were able to get that building, which has allowed us, we serve probably almost 200 people a week in that building. And that's adults, and trying to help them have services, give the parents an opportunity to keep their jobs, and all these things. So we're busy. Thank you. And we're in the schools, and we use your pool every day. Thank you for keeping your pool going, because we send 150 kids a day to you guys, to the pool. So thank you.
Cool. If there are no questions, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
You're welcome. Hi. So my name is President Jones, and the Austin Jones, and the brother law, and Austin Marty went to the camp, and the 2-day weekend today.
Oh, that was camp today.
Yes.
Friends, huh, Brandon?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is Liz with the Domestic Violence Services of Benton Franklin County.
Hi, I'm Liz Alamora with Domestic Violence Services of Benton and Franklin Counties. Our office is located in Kennewick at the 3311 West Clearwater Avenue. I would like to express my gratitude for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of Domestic Violence Services, Counties, and Pasco Maripositas Outreach Project. So, the mission of DVS is to create a healthy community free from all forms of domestic violence. Since 2003, DVS has been a source of hope for people fleeing abusive homes. DVS is the only nonprofit organization in Benton and Franklin counties that advocates for victims and survivors of domestic violence by intimate partners. Services are free and confidential. DVS-BF offers a range of intervention services, including a 24/7 crisis helpline, emergency shelter, mobile phones with emergency 911 access, legal advocacy, and assistance with safety planning. DVS-BF works to prevent domestic violence by promoting awareness, education, and training throughout the community. The organization also offers youth programs dedicated to preventing teen dating violence. DVS-BF offers assistance and provisions to their clients, such as support groups for women, programs for children in the shelter, and schools and housing programs. DVS-BF is grateful to have a 4-unit apartment complex in Kennewick provided by the City of Kennewick. This complex provides income-based housing to clients who are working towards stabilization and work closely with advocates to move forward on their journey. We are also fortunate to be working with Commerce and Bricker Construction to build a complex with 10 affordable housing units in Richland, which is expected to be completed in September. DVS-BF clients are able to stay for up to 2 years while working towards finding permanent housing. We are also offer services to help individual families who have survived domestic violence. For example, we helped a young single mother who stayed at our confidential shelter after fleeing from her abusive husband. She and her children were eligible for housing program but faced emotional, mental, financial, and other cultural barriers. However, with our support, including safety planning, resources, and housing assistance, she was able to overcome these barriers and make sustainable living on her own. Our advocates helped her set goals such as gaining credit and employment. She also worked hard to achieve them within a year. She attended support groups and received case management from our resource team and housing advocate. Eventually, she obtained a full-time position and purchased her home with help of collaborating with Habitat for Humanity. Providing assistance to survivors is valuable. It's a valuable community service. It is important for the community to support survivors who are seeking opportunities to succeed. This is just one of many examples of how different services and resources can work together to help survivors. Creating a safe and welcoming space for traumatized survivors and their children to regroup is essential. We are seeking $70,000 in funding to achieve Goal 3, Strategy 1, Objective 3, and Outcome 1 of our application. Our aim is to support our service programs that help lower-income individuals become self-sufficient and improve accessibility to our community services. To accomplish this, we plan to hire 2 new Pasco bilingual bicultural staff to help assist an additional 800 low to moderate income residents. As Pasco continues to grow, these services will benefit residents in their primary language and culture. DBS also hopes to secure space at the new Martin Luther King location to provide services to the underserved communities, including those with low incomes, immigrants, shelter residents, farm workers, migrants, monolingual Spanish speakers, LGBTQIA individuals, and people of color. By meeting these groups where they're at, we can provide essential services and supports to those who need it most. We are committed to meeting the pressing needs of vulnerable individuals in our community who confront multiple obstacles because of their immigration status, transportation, and language barriers. We are delighted that we have submitted our application to the Pasco Community Development Block Grant, and we express our gratitude to this chance on behalf of Domestic Violence Services. Any questions?
Thank you, Liz. And then for commissioners, just for your reference, this actually is not entitled DVSBF. It's entitled Pasco Maripositas Outreach, just so you know which application you're looking at if you weren't familiar with that. So, any questions for?
Yes. Commissioner Moffitt here. So this comes from a place, I'm a retired law enforcement from the west side. Don't hold the west side against me. When I spoke with domestic violence advocates as an officer, and their classes they presented, I always had one question, and that question I'm going to ask you is, do you provide any services to men? Because when over on the other side, at least in my jurisdiction, they never spoke about what they provided for men, and it was a hot contention, and we pulled all the officers where I worked in that area, and it was a 50-50 arrest pattern. So we arrested half women, half men. We didn't play favorites. We arrested the primary aggressor, and that's what the law required at the time. So my question to you is, do you have anything that's provided for men or that you're aware of? And if so, can you just kind of elaborate just a little bit on that?
Yeah, so we provide services to all genders. It doesn't matter, men, women, anything, anybody that, needs our services, we are available for. We do have an emergency shelter. That shelters only women and children, but we do have off-site places that we work with, for example, hotels in the area that can shelter men. So we are open to helping anybody that is seeking our services.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And just for clarification, so this, if you do get this funding, that would give 2 staff to focus solely on Pasco?
Yes, so we are trying to expand our services beyond Kennewick and Richland since we have some locations there. We are trying to do a satellite office. Our staff that are going to be focusing on would be the Pasco locations, as well as maybe entirely Hope being Franklin County, doing a lot of mobile outreach, and just having a place where someone can come in. And if there's an office space, something like that, we can provide services too, so it remains confidential. But the point of all of this is that we want to make it as accessible as possible to anybody that is seeking our services.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your willingness to bring your services to our city.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Lehrman. I just want to say it's unfortunate that we have to have this type of service, but really greatly appreciate the hearts that are working hard to be able to offer that out to those in need. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Excellent. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Next is Rosanna. She's going to be talking about the Code Enforcement Officers Program and Code and Community Program.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Rosanna Johnson. I'm the lead code officer for City of Pasco. I have two proposals for you tonight, and these proposals are part of the Code Division's plan to meet council goals this year. The first proposal is for a community outreach pilot program. Since 1966, the City of Pasco has maintained a code inspection division. Later in 1996, the Pasco City Council identified the need for an enhanced code enforcement program, which included education, efficient processing of cases, and decriminalization of code violations. The purpose of the Inspection Services Code Division is to maintain the city as a clean, safe, and healthy place to live and work through voluntary compliance. The Code Division meets the CDBG national objectives to improve housing opportunities, sustain the quality of existing housing, address issues in living environments, removing slums and blighted areas, and aids in preventing homelessness. Staff find that many code violations can be resolved through outreach and education. Current staffing levels and the quickly increasing population of the city inhibit staff ability to connect with residents in a meaningful way and be able to spend time with them. Since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, Inspection Services has worked to rebuild our outreach efforts overall. This is through hosting booths at city events, attending community meetings, implementation of a speaking engagement request form on the city website, mailing general information postcards, door hangers, posters in City Hall that you might have seen as you walked into here, brochures, knock and talks, weekly content through the Inspection Services Facebook page, and most recently through monthly local radio interviews. Code staff interacts with numerous people every day, providing a vital connection between city services and citizens. Staff has identified a need to further educate residents and connect them with their neighbors, local businesses, and community resources. Often when receiving notice of code violations, the complainant states that they have not talked to the property owner as they don't know their neighbors and they're afraid to talk to them or approach them. Through connection with outside resources, staff has been able to assist numerous residents in receiving nonprofit assistance to clear debris and vegetation, enter permanent housing through the Department of Social and Human Services Housing Resource Center, and to make necessary repairs to their homes to prevent further dilapidation or homelessness. In 2022, through the CDBG Rehabilitation Program, code staff conducted inspections and assisted with completion of 10 owner-occupied rehabilitations, which included replacement of roofs, siding, installation of heat and AC, egress windows, and connection to city water and sewer. Staff also referred to commercial businesses which had been cited with code violations to the CDBG program for repairs. Both of those businesses qualified and completed the repairs, resulting in code violation cases being dismissed without penalty. With the requested $10,000 in funding, the Code Division would host a total of 4 events in 2024. One event would be hosted in each of the low to moderate income census tracts in the city of Pasco. The costs will cover the rental of a roll-off dumpster, initial purchase of cleanup supplies and tools, offset staff wages, otherwise not covered in the budget, advertising of the event, and supplying food and entertainment to the attending residents. The events will host other city departments as well, outside nonprofits and resource agencies, include cleanup of trash, debris, and graffiti in the streets surrounding the event location. And we would provide the dumpster for the target residents to be able to easily dispose of large amounts of debris from their yards right on site. This would work to connect residents with their neighbors and help us to educate the residents of city codes while we work together. Staff expects a decrease in escalated code violations and an increase in neighborhood relations, pride and property maintenance, resident confidence in city staff and services, further interest in CDBG down payment assistance and rehabilitation programs, and additional partnerships with community volunteer and nonprofit groups. So that is my first proposal. Do you have any questions on this one?
Just one clarification.
Yes.
It looks like, based on the application, that it's southeast, I guess southeast Pasco only. Is that because that's where you find the most outreach and violation issues are focused? Or?
We're targeting the low to moderate income areas, which would be from the 395 over to the eastern city limits of Pasco.
Okay, and that's where you're. Okay.
And that's predominantly where we have the least amount of complaints come from residents with the highest observable violations.
Gotcha, okay, thank you. Any questions on this one before she moves to the second one? Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so our second proposal is for an additional rental inspector position. At the moment, we only have one. We're looking to add another position permanently. So the proactive rental inspections are required to maintain and improve the housing stock and keep people in their homes. Multiple studies demonstrate that tenants living in the worst housing conditions are usually the most vulnerable and least likely to complain due to threat of illegal evictions. The City of Pasco Residential Rental Licensing and Certification Program was adopted by ordinance in 1997 by Council to ensure that all Pasco rental dwellings are maintained in compliance with the minimum housing code standards for habitability. As a condition of issuance of the rental license, the dwelling owner is required to provide the city a passing certification of inspection at the time of application, and then again once every 2 years thereafter. The Code Division administers the rental program on a 2-year cycle, dividing the city into 8 districts, with each district corresponding to a 3-month period for inspections. Property owners may hire an approved third party to conduct the inspection, or they can schedule with code staff as part of their rental license. Nearly all residential rental inspections are completed by code staff who are certified by the International Code Council to conduct housing and property maintenance inspections. Proactive rental inspections not only protect the tenants, but also aid the owner in maintaining their investment and reduce hazards in general for the fire department and police during emergency responses. Rental inspectors identify windows which don't meet egress size, obstructions to emergency escape routes, inoperable or missing smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, missing address numbers, placement of fire extinguishers, testing of fire alarm and sprinkler systems, and common electrical and fire hazards. Inspectors educate landlords and tenants on proper repairs and fire and life safety codes throughout the inspection process. Historically, the rental program has operated by rotating code officers between violation investigations and rental inspections every quarter or annually. And this has proven to be an ineffective way to manage the program, and it is producing less than desirable results for both investigations and inspections. In the beginning of 2023, the city replaced an existing code officer position with a full-time rental inspector and hired a second temporary full-time rental inspector. Last year, between the dates of March 1st to June 1st of 2022, staff inspected 272 dwelling units, and that's compared to the same time frame in 2023 with 509 units having been inspected with 2 rental inspectors. This equates to an increase of 86% inspections being completed in that time frame. This increase in performance means that inspectors can conduct additional re-inspections as necessary and spend more time educating landlords and tenants, which ends up resulting in fewer rental violations being converted to code cases. Addition of the second rental inspector has also increased the ability to conduct 24-hour re-inspections of life and safety violations, and this is ensuring that hazards are almost immediately corrected. The second position is critical to running the rental program as intended. Per U.S. Census data, 31% of all existing dwellings in Pasco are rentals. And as you know, City Council has passed code amendments to allow accessory dwelling units and increase density throughout the city in all residential zones. So currently there are 6,438 licensed rental units in the city as of today. Applications have already been submitted for construction of over 1,500 rental units in this year alone. And that is a 24% increase in rental units that will all require inspections at the time of licensing and every 2 years thereafter. With the increasing construction and population, the rental program cannot be managed effectively if the second rental inspector position is not funded. Do you have any questions on this one for me?
So I have a few questions on the rental inspector. So how do you decide, other than at the time of licensing and every 2 years, who to inspect? Do you also inspect when people have complaints or something like that, or what actually draws you to do an inspection?
So if you're licensed, automatically you're going to be inspected at the time of licensing every 2 years. And that's every single rental that we have in the city. We do have limitations on the number of units. So if you have a multifamily complex, more than 20 units, then we inspect 20%. Unless you have failed inspections, we can inspect 100% of the units. On occasion, that does happen, where we have to inspect more than, say, 15 in a 100-unit complex. Otherwise, single-family dwellings are all inspected. As far as complaints, we do take complaints from citizens. They have to follow the RCW, landlord-tenant laws, and once they've complied with the timeframes and requirements of that, they bring the complaint to us. We inspect, and we have to continue to follow through.
So it sounds to me like you're way understaffed.
We have a lot of work.
Massively understaffed, if you can do the numbers, right? Phew. I also just want to take a moment and thank you for the work you do. The code inspectors, code enforcement they're forgotten quite often. I know it from being a police officer on the other side of the mountains, your job is huge when it comes to decreasing the drugs, the homelessness, all of the problems that are all encompassed in there. I mean, abatements. I'm sure you're part of the abatement process.
Yes.
Huge. The people that are doing drugs out on the streets, they need a place to do their drugs, and that's what they're looking for, the empty homes and stuff that you're going in and taking care of. So I just want to take a moment to thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a quick question. And this is more, I guess, long term, right? If you get the funding for this position, how do you plan to keep that person funded or those positions funded going forward long term?
At the moment, it would be funded through CDBG as far as wages go. The city pays for the benefits for each staff member that is already funded and is proposed to be funded. We would request it in future budgets.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess that's where I had the related question. So that the 210 is the salary portion, and the city's paying the 90,000. So I guess we paying our inspectors really well. The other funds though is the benefits part you're talking about.
Right, and I want to make sure the 210,000 is for 3 total positions.
Oh, okay.
Right now,
That makes
CDBG already funds 1.5 inspections that are. I'm sorry.
I guess we got the
1.5
second thing that
positions.
said second rental inspector. So
I
we just thought it
apologize.
was one.
Right.
Like, that's a really expensive one.
That would be very good pay.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Lehrman.
Yes.
In comparison to Kennewick and Richland, do they also use their CBG to pay for inspectors, or is that already put into their budget?
Richland does not have a rental inspection program, nor does Kennewick. So in Richland, code enforcement is handled out of their police department, and they supply the funding. In Kennewick, they have 1.5 code enforcement officers. I'm not sure where they get their funding for, though. So.
And then a second question I have, if it sounds like there's a great push for educational outreach on to be able to partner with the citizens and help them understand what their responsibilities are. But also, I have heard that sometimes people might call in over and over to code enforcement to come in, and that can create like a harassing situation. Is there any way that code enforcement tracks who calls in, or is there a certain amount of codes violations you can call in at a time, or how does that work so it's a safe place for everyone?
Understood. Right now, anybody can call in and make a complaint, and you can be anonymous, and you can stop me in the street and give me your complaint as long as I'm on duty. As far as people calling in and calling on the same person, same property again and again, if there's no violation, there's no issue, no citation noticed sent to them, and no contact made. But if there is a violation, then we have to continue with our process and cite them. We do our best to work with people as much as we can. We call people, we email them, we'll knock and talk at their door, leave door hangers like I kind of mentioned in our proposal. We do a lot of effort as much as we're able to. There's 3 complaint officers, so really only 2 out in the field at a time. It is kind of difficult to get to everybody in person, but we do our best.
And one last quick question.
Of course.
Is there a method for those that don't speak English to be able to, and beyond Spanish too, to be able to communicate?
Yes. So we have several staff members that speak Spanish, of course. And we also have Language Link. So we can call up Language Link, and we have a list of other languages. They can point to that, and then we'll have somebody who translates in live over the phone for us. And then we can also use Google Translate if we're in a pinch. So,
Thank you.
yep, of course.
All right, any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, I believe that's it for anybody that was gonna be giving a presentation. So the other applications that we have here, one of our directors couldn't make it, so I was gonna kind of go briefly over his. So the ACS department, which is Administrative and Community Services, they were applying for 3 recreation specialists. They have one at the Civic Center, one at Martin Luther King, and then the First Avenue Center, which used to be called the Senior Center. They have applied in the past. Let's see, Senior Life Resources, they are the Mid-Columbia Meals on Wheels. They actually applied. The ACS with the City of Pasco also applied for their Pasco Youth Recreation Scholarship Program. League of Education Voters Foundation, this is their first time applying. ACS also applied for replacing some of the equipment at the Pasco Specialty Kitchen. CDBG and myself, I applied for minor rehab funds again, and also facade. As you had heard from Rosanna, we did 2 facades this year, and those were monies from 2016 and 2018 that had not been spent. But with the help of code enforcement going out there and talking to these individuals, brought them to the city to apply for those funds. And then we also do have to pay for the Section 108 debt payment, and that's for the next 18 years. So that will always be in our funding unless general fund decides to take that payment over. So do you guys have any questions or anything on any of the applications?
The only thing I had a question about was, and maybe the surprise to some of the other questions too, like both the priority and the thing I noted in like one of them, I think it was the League of Education Voters, was designated as high risk. And I know there's probably a rubric behind it. I just don't know what that is.
Yeah, we have a risk assessment that we do.
Yeah.
And so it has questions that HUD has us ask them. And so that's where we come up with what their risk number is, or whether they're going to be medium, high, or low. So
Is that detailed in the application at all, or just?
no, but it does say in the application that they will be assessed. So
Okay. I'm just curious what that means. Like if somebody's designated high risk.
If you guys like, I can give you copies of the risk assessments for the applications the next time.
No, maybe next month when.
When I come back, I can bring those to you.
If there's just a quick reference guide on what the attributes of a high risk means, like if it means that they're unlikely to execute, or they have a bad track record, or what does that mean? Right?
No, there's just questions that are on there, and we basically get the answers from the application. So
okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's got one question. What's the safety upgrade on the ball field at Chrisman Park?
I'm sorry, what was the safety upgrade?
Yeah.
So they're wanting to replace some of the bleachers and some of the equipment that's there right now.
Okay.
So.
Then I had a question on the back onto the League of Education Voters. So I went through this, and I just basically by the names and different things, I know what everybody kind of does or what their jobs are, but the League of that one threw me. What can you give us any information on that organization?
I've actually never heard of them before, so
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I was hoping they were, because I have it highlighted here as well.
Yeah. Oh, who's next?
And then coming back to the Kurtzman Park, I noticed it said on page 2, number 7, it didn't list how many residents would be served.
Yeah, so the individual that filled out that application is new in filling these out, so we kind of had to explain that to him, and so he was going to get us that number, so we're hoping that when we come back in August, we'll have that for you guys.
So would the League of Educated Voters would be able to come back in August and also do a presentation, or?
Sure, yes, because it's still a public hearing, so.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Any other questions? Did you have one? No. Okay.
Is there anything that you guys would like to see at the next meeting that you would like me to bring? Any more information besides staff's recommendation?
I think staff recommendations are good. Maybe some of the guidance on the prioritization and risk assessment.
Okay, yeah, I can
rubric.
bring those to you and.
If there's like a quick one sheet, quick reference
Yeah,
or something.
I can bring that to you and you can kind of
And
see.
then I know like in other years, it can make for a long meeting, but if you, staff recommendations help, but also if you have a recommendation on how to approach the voting.
Yeah.
that would
So,
help too.
this year what we're doing things a little bit differently with having a new director. And so we are going to have a staff committee that will review all the applications and then bring back the recommendations. We are going to try to stay within the guidelines of council goals as well as the consolidated plan goals. And again, those were increasing and preserving affordable housing, community neighborhood, and economic development, and then homeless intervention and public service, with the housing affordability being a very big topic right now. We're kind of hoping to kind of go in that kind of direction with the applications that should be funded. So.
Great. That sounds like a good approach. So we know what you're recommending and why. And then, great to see Jacob shaking things up. So.
Yes.
One last thing too that would I just thought of that would be helpful as well is like if we could if on some of these like it's a kind of an all or nothing or if it can be parceled out like if they can accept say for example half of the money they could still do some work or if they don't get the full amount then it's not worth it to them.
Okay. Yep. We can do that.
Yeah,
too.
that's a great point, both for the cities as well as externals. Like, if, for example, could you, it seems like with the code or the inspection, it's like, well, if it's 3, could you, 2 would still help, right? So is that a recommendation that staff would make or whatever, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else before the next topic? And we will continue the public hearing with the home portion.
Yeah. Okay, so with home program that is separate from CDBG funds, so Pasco entered into a home consortium agreement with Kennewick and Richland back in 1996, making the cities eligible for federal home dollars. Each member city is allocated an equal share of the entitlement after subtracting the 10% set aside for the lead agency to administer the program, which is Richland, and 15% set aside for Community Housing Development Organization, which is known as CHODO. We currently do not have one, but Habitat for Humanity, who used to be the CHODO for the Home Consortium, is actually in the process of filling out the application and getting certified. The estimated entitlement funds for Pasco is $179,000. Estimated program income is $100,000. These funds are from down payment assistance loans that the city of Pasco has done over the previous years. Somebody sells their home, transfers ownership, they have to then pay us back the money that we lent them to get into the home. We're budgeting $100,000 for owner-occupied rehabs. This is something that we just currently started doing. Previously in the past, they only used the home funds for down payment assistance and tenant-based rental assistance. So we are including owner-occupied rehabs. The only difference is between CDBG funds and home funds. When you fund a rehab with home funds, the house has to be brought up to current code standards. So with only getting $100,000, that could actually wipe out all the money with one home if the house needed a lot of work. So down payment assistance, we are only going to budget $10,000. Last year we actually only did one down payment assistance, and this year we haven't done any, and we're already into July. So, and also we are budgeting $109,000 to tenant-based rental assistance, which is contracted through CAC, Community Action Connections, to administer the program, and they do it for all 3 cities. And then we're budgeting program administration of $10,000, and that just helps pay for staff's time to help administer the program. Any questions on this one?
Any questions? Are there any public
No.
But-
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions from the commissioners on this one?
And this one, we also don't need you to make any recommendations or anything tonight. We'll come back
In August.
next month with the resolution for y'all to approve.
All right, buckle up for a long meeting in August. All right, I guess we move on from the home, and the next item on the public hearing is a draft housing action plan, and I guess we'll turn it over to Jacob.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Keeping the focus on housing, we are excited tonight to present you attached to your staff report, the draft housing action and implementation plan that's been prepared by city staff along with our consultant team of Onays and Associates, along with support from Eco Northwest. In late June, city staff submitted our draft plan along with the supporting material to the Department of Commerce, which nearly completes our contract under the grant program that we applied for, to which the Department of Commerce would reimburse the city for approximately $100,000 to help support this plan. So we're really excited to get close to the goalpost here. So I wanted to do a little bit of just context setting here in terms of housing and affordable housing in particular. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as a cost when it's no more than 30% of a household's gross income. And so when it exceeds 30%, HUD defines that as a household being cost burden. There's also a second level when the household cost exceeds more than 50% of a household's gross income. That is considered severely cost burdened. So a few slides here on the housing market trends. Some of these are a little bit of a summary from what the commission saw a couple of months ago, but again, I wanted to summarize these data points. So the average rent in the city of Pasco is approximately $1,272, and that is affordable to households making just under $51,000. And the median sale price, these are according to CoStar, Redfin, and our Eco Northwest firm, is $386,000, which is affordable to households making $96,500. And the 2022 household median income in the city of Pasco is about $70,000, so right in the middle. So what the data has shown us so far is that renters and our renter households are most vulnerable to the rising cost of housing. So on the left, you see a chart that depicts the difference between 2010 and 2021 for renter households, and that dark blue is the percentage of severely cost burden. So that's 50% or more of their household income is allocated towards housing cost. And that light blue is just cost burden, which is 30% or more. And what we see is that between there's a slight increase between 2010 and 2021 in terms of overall cost burden households, but there's been a pretty good increase, 6% increase in folks who are cost burden, and a slight decrease in severely cost burden households for renters. And then you can see the dramatic decrease between 2010 and 2021 for homeowner occupied units. So we wanted to take a look at the shifts in incomes for owner-occupied homes and renter households. And between 2010 and 2021, renters and owners both experienced income growth, but that wasn't felt equally. So there's been a 54% increase in income for owners and a 49% increase for median renters, but you can see obviously the difference in the actual number. And what we also want to do is contrast that with the 106% rise in median home values over the same time period. So the discrepancies between income levels between owner-occupied units and renters overlaid with the cost of the homes themselves. One of the requirements of our housing plan via the state of Washington is to begin taking a look at areas where the city may begin to see displacement. And so displacement in the sense of neighborhoods that experience new development or redevelopment that essentially displaces residents due to the rising cost of housing. That could be new rental units coming into the neighborhood that raises the cost. And so one of the ways for us to begin to predict this, and it's not an exact science, is by looking at areas that are experiencing poverty and also looking at areas that have households that are non-Hispanic white with the predominant race and ethnicity. And so you can see that in the eastern side of the city, the darker shades of purple tell us the areas of the city that line up with higher percentage of individuals experiencing poverty. And so if we start to see more redevelopment, in our case, in Central Pasco and East Pasco, it could be an indicator that we may in the future, without displacement measures in place, we may begin to see displacement. And so one of the key recommendations you'll see later on in the presentation are recommendation strategies to prevent displacement from happening, as that's happened in many of our larger cities across the West Coast, across the nation. This table tells us a story of just how rapidly the change in the cost of housing has been between 2010 and 2022. So the city of Pasco, just looking at some of our neighboring communities of Kennewick, Richland, Yakima, and Walla Walla. So between all of those communities, Pasco experienced the highest increase in housing, about 137%. So roughly $223,000 difference between 2010 and 2022, which is higher than Kennewick and significantly higher than the other communities listed on this table. One of the things that our consultant team was able to produce was looking at the wages and the wages earned in the city of Pasco, and determining who can actually afford the rent, who can afford the median home price, and who can afford it with 1.5 earners per household. So all those cells shaded in gray, the answer is typically no, that if you're in this industry with the annual average wage, looking at the max affordable rent, affordable home price, it is likely that you will not be able to afford that unit, whereas the cells shaded in red indicate that you likely could afford those units. So when we look at who can afford the average rent in Pasco, we look at some of our residents who are working in construction, manufacturing, wholesale trade, transportation and warehousing, finance and insurance, and professional and technical services. And when we look at who can afford the median home price in Pasco, that shrinks down all the way to one category, which is information. Now, when you do 1.5 times in terms of earners per household, that goes slightly back up, and where you start to see more households able to afford the median home price. What I wanted to add a little bit about this, there's more information analysis we can do with this kind of data. We can kind of look at forecasting based on the trajectory of the different industries that have been growing in Pasco. We're obviously seeing a lot more warehousing and logistics with different wages. And so one of the things we task our consultant with is to give us a little bit more forecasting information so we can kind of take a look at forecasts. So there's always an asterisk. But if we're seeing an increase in professional services in Pasco, do these sales begin to change over time? And is there a way for us to predict, again with an asterisk, which industries in terms of workforce may be more at risk of not being able to afford the rising cost of housing in our community? So certainly some more work for us to do, and we love all the data we can get, so that's pretty cool. Essentially what the results of our existing conditions report of the Housing Action Plan have determined, which is obviously the need that Pasco has to plan and accommodate for diverse housing types for households at all income levels. It's a story and a narrative that staff's been sharing with this commission for several years now. And so one of the things we want to look at is housing cost and the different factors that, the different elements at play that impact into the housing cost. So one of the things to do is to look at the actual price of land itself. So what you see here are sketches and concepts that are based off of the analysis from our consultant team, also looking at actual real data from the city of Pasco's building permits. And it might not be a surprise, but building at higher densities at smaller scales can reduce the housing cost for developers, renters, and homeowners, because essentially the unit cost is the price per unit decreases with the more density. And you can kind of see that for a single family home on a 7,000 square foot lot, you're looking at approximately $491,000 per unit. We are working and sharing this information with our development community to sort of ground truth this information, but this is based off of legitimate analysis on our own building permit information. So a single family home is roughly $491,000 per unit. And as you go up the scale in terms of number of units, you can see that a sixplex, for example, decreases down to $259,000 per unit, and you go up higher to more of an apartment style project or complex, you can get down to about $178,000 per unit. And this table kind of describes that a little bit more in detail, where it breaks down the square footage per unit, the cost per square foot, the land cost, which we've kept the same for this scenario, the fees, which again are coming out of our own fees that we charge here for development at the City of Pasco, and then the development cost and the development cost per unit. You can see that the larger unit on a single family detached, for example, is again roughly $491,000 per unit. The denser you go, the decrease, the cost of the unit decreases based on the number of increased density. So we also wanted to share sort of some basic fundamentals about housing development economics. There's a lot of narratives that are out these days, and we just wanted to, again, kind of set the context that typically cities are not real estate developers. We do not develop or build housing. Our developers and our builders and our property owners, they are the ones that construct housing. So developers can be private, they can be nonprofit organizations, they can be for-profit organizations, they can be public corporations. Here in Pasco, obviously, we have a wealth of private developers. We have an increasing amount of nonprofit and advocacy organizations, and also our own housing authority of Pasco and Franklin County. So there's several factors that go into is housing feasible or not in a community. So there's public policy, there's market feasibility, there's capital, access to finances, etc. And then there's the land itself. And all of those things dictate whether development can occur. So this is one of the stories that we shared when we were moving forward with the Planning Commission and City Council when we initiated the House Bill 1923 effort. And that was the effort that staff proposed based on the Department of Commerce guidelines to increase the allowable types of units on most residential parcels in the city of Pasco. And what was true for Pasco wasn't the same for other communities. There were several other communities that moved forward with those standards just to have them in the case that their city experienced rapid growth, but they may not be applicable several years, several decades, maybe several generations. In Pasco's case, that growth is happening right now, and so those changes that begin to yield with different types of units, which Rosanna talked about earlier, and have been able to actually accommodate the new development patterns and opportunities for folks. So local governments, City of Pasco, for example, we have an impact and influence on whether development is easy or not. And so there's the funding and incentive side when you look at loans, grants, a lot of the things we just talked about in the previous two presentations. There's the regulatory side. This is our zoning. This is parking and infrastructure requirements, permitted impact fees, and the permitting timeline. How long does it take to get from an application in the door and out the door and ready in a place for somebody to live in? And then there's the comprehensive planning. So that's land supply, making sure that we're accommodating growth by preserving lands for different types of densities, placemaking and amenities, ensuring that our neighborhoods are built with community in mind, that the places are safe to walk or safe to drive in, making sure that the infrastructure is there. We have several areas of the city that for a very long time will likely lack the necessary infrastructure to experience redevelopment, and then availability of public transportation. So all these things really factor into whether housing is feasible or not. And the results of the findings to development strategies here based on our housing action plan, and just kind of wanted to break this down, is kind of a summary of who's in Pasco today. So we have a relatively young population. I think when we did our transportation master plan, we had a median age of roughly 29 years old, which was 10 years younger, or almost 10 years younger than a state average. It's decreased a little bit over the last couple of years. Our senior adults that are 60 years and older saw the fastest growth in the past decade. So are we planning enough for folks that are aging into place? And do we have that in our community for folks that age in place? Our Hispanic and Latino community members continue to be a rapidly growing community group in the city of Pasco. There is certainly a socioeconomic gap between our non-Hispanic white residents with Black and Hispanic residents. In particular, you saw a little bit about this last month during the presentation of the economic development strategy, where certainly wages have increased citywide for residents, but that wage increase hasn't been experienced equally amongst residents in the community. And while median renter incomes have grown, they remain very low compared to other groups. So what will Pasco's population look like in the future? Pasco's population is projected to grow by 86% by the year 2045. And in the next 20 years, Pasco's children and young adults will age. The share of Pasco's senior residents is increasing. And Pasco's future households will be majority family size with 3 or more person households. So are we building enough variety of units that can actually accommodate larger households? So what are the current housing affordability conditions in Pasco? There's certainly a gap between home prices and rental costs. The income disparity with households making 100% of the area median income can afford the average rent but cannot afford the average median priced home. The barriers exist to home ownership, and the need to increase the supply of both renter and ownership product units is important, so allowing a lot of both. The low vacancy is still very much something that residents are experiencing. We saw those results in our community housing survey, and that the housing affordability is a rising challenge. And John, I might call you because it says that you're going to end the GoToWebinar. I shouldn't have said that on the mic.
Yeah, hang on just a moment.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay.
And we're back right on time for a discussion on housing strategies and actions. So these are the recommendations to actually address the housing conditions that we're experiencing today and those that we're expected to occur in the future. And so there's 5 primary housing strategies. These are draft recommendations from our consultant team based on community input, stakeholder input, and results of all the data collection. And strategy number 1 is to remove regulatory barriers to support the development of a variety of housing types. Strategy number 2 is to increase home ownership opportunities. Number 3 is to expand the supply and access of affordable housing. Number 4 is to build housing for Pasco special population groups. And number 5 is to mitigate displacement of vulnerable residents. And so under strategy number 1, what you see on the left is the sort of an illustration of the area median income that this particular strategy and goals would seek to attempt to address. And so strategy 1.1 is something we've actually had a lot of success with this planning commission that's taken a look at our regulatory environment with regards to lot sizes, setbacks, having objective design standards, looking at reducing parking requirements where appropriate, and increasing the kind of units available or the units tolerance for different parcels across the city. So it's taking a look at those and making sure that those aren't outdated and making sure they're appropriate for today and in the future. Some of the proposed recommendations include the continuation of reviewing and amending the density increase for design standards. So looking at ways where we can increase density if a particular development includes something within their project. Some examples of this include if housing development wants to dedicate a certain amount of their housing units for housing at a certain income level, the city might want to look at allowing increased densities or reducing certain standards so that they can achieve those. looking at exploring and the expansion and really tailoring our development impact fees. So that's both taking a look and making sure those fees are appropriate to pay for the impacts that those developments are creating. We also want to make sure we're not swinging the sort of lever too far in a manner that decreases the feasibility of housing. So as you saw several slides before, impact fees certainly have an impact on whether housing is feasible or not. We want to make sure that if there is an impact fee, that it's doing what it's supposed to do, but if there's ways to reduce it or give credits for dedicating certain amounts of units for affordability, if they're in close proximity to public transportation, public parks, educational facilities, etc. Those might be areas where we might want to take a look at decreasing or offering credits of impact fees, including amending the deferral of impact fees to a later date to allow the financing side to catch up before they have to pay the fee. On strategy number 2, which is increasing homeownership opportunities, some of the recommended strategies include developing pre-approved housing plans. So many communities have experimented with pre-approved ADUs. We've been fairly successful with our accessory dwelling unit program, which is brand new here at the City of Pasco. Some communities have experimented with having just an ADU prototype that would be automatically approved if it can comply with the ADU prototype. And so that shaves time off the permitting review. Certainly from a staff point, it saves time from our review process, and it lets the applicant know that they have a viable project from start to end in a much quicker manner. We can explore implementing a voluntary inclusionary housing program. And something that's fairly new to us is explore building a relationship with community land trust in our region. For the strategy number 3 on expanding the supply and access to affordable housing, one of the big ones that we're likely going to move further with is the establishment of a multifamily tax exemption program. I think the city of Kennewick or Benton County utilizes. It's a state program that allows you to essentially exempt some of the property tax for a certain amount of period of time if some of the units in that project are held at certain income levels. So we may want to take a look at establishing that in the city of Pasco. And that may be an offset to some of the impact fees. Looking at land banking for affordable housing, so accommodating, sort of collecting lands, looking at publicly owned lands that are no longer viable for whatever the original intent was, but may make sense for housing, taking a look at that. Looking at a revolving loan fund to support affordable housing development, and obviously investing in the infrastructure in areas with higher opportunities for mixed densities and mixed types of housing. On strategy number 4, which is to build housing for Pasco special population groups. This is an area that we actually heard quite a bit from during our stakeholder workshop process that is quite underserved right now, and that is the recommendation to engage alternative housing providers to build affordable housing for special population groups. So making sure that the housing that's being built are available for folks experiencing different things throughout their lives. Adopting code amendments, changes to the Pasco Municipal Code that accommodate supportive and transitional housing and emergency shelters. And certainly complying with recently adopted state legislation that addresses housing affordability for communities across the state. On our last strategy for the mitigation and displacement of vulnerable residents, some of the things that we would be looking at are, one is actually monitoring regulated affordable housing properties and developing a housing preservation ordinance. And a lot of this actually ties into what our staff in inspection services does by making sure that the units we actually have in the city of Pasco remain in a place where they're safe for our residents to live in. And so by preventing them from entering stages of blight or safety, for example, we can keep those units alive for more residents to have access to. So it might be developing a more comprehensive approach to that, expanding tenant protections and centralizing our tenant resources, and providing homeowner assistance and resources as well. A lot of this is about increasing education awareness as well. Additional strategies on displacement, something that was brought up in the last presentation, is having enough resources from a staff perspective, so building internal capacity to actually accommodate all of these recommendations, continuing to build the data and the research to guide future policy actions, and supporting residents now through readily implementable policies and programs. So are there things that we can get off the ground really soon, really quick, versus waiting a year or two before a program or a plan is adopted? And guiding our future growth by building a zoning and a land use structure that is prepared to accommodate new residents to the city of Pasco, which is obviously a discussion that we've been we've been having quite a bit here with the Planning Commission over the last several years. With regards to building internal capacity, this has been the discussion where is there opportunities for us to develop a more frequent cycle of meeting with our housing stakeholders to keep this discussion kind of on the top of mind, so we don't lose anything over a series of months or throughout the iterations of plan development. Building capacity for data gathering and analysis, and improving Pasco's ability to leverage local, state, and federal funding opportunities to preserve and create affordable housing. So a long list of strategies for the city of Pasco to take a look at, and we certainly want Planning Commission's input and guidance on. And a little bit more on data research is just to define and track residential displacements. Some of this is actually starting this tracking, researching policies or programs with racially disparate impacts, which we've initiated with our partnership with the New York University Wagner School of Public Policy, and also estimating affordable housing funding and financing needs throughout the future. So is there a way for us to forecast what we may need to look at in the future? Some of these we've talked about before, so I'll skip these. And I just wanted to provide some next steps in terms of the Housing Action Plan. Obviously, that plan is attached for your review as part of your staff report. This is our first public hearing. We did advertise for a second public hearing. We're hoping for a recommendation on the August 18th Planning Commission meeting. And we met with our stakeholder group for a third time last week. We had a really great conversation with folks. And what we've asked them to do, and we'll ask them to do tomorrow actually, is to take another look at our draft plan and let us know what their comments are. Is there anything that we need to refine, address, revise, etc.? And then come back with a fourth stakeholder workshop in late August, and then we can incorporate those changes into the version that will be in front of City Council later this summer and then early this fall. And when that's adopted by Council, we'll submit the final plan to the Department of Commerce and wrap up our contract obligations, and then begin implementing the plan itself. So really appreciate the Planning Commission's support over the last several years in developing our housing program in general. It's really led to this point so far, and excited and happy to answer any questions I can from you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great work. Any questions from the commissioners or feedback as well?
Yeah, just the feedback of, first, thank you for the presentation, but I think we've done a lot for the zoning code. I think that's absolutely transparent to see from city residents. The one that really stood out that I'm looking forward to is strategy 1 under the deferred impact fees. I think that's one of the common topics that everyone is talking about. So looking at that and making sure that we're kind of just making those changes if necessary, I think this is going to be very good. So I really do appreciate seeing that on there.
I love hearing the passion in your voice about this plan, and you can hear it with the rapid fire, but it seems like it's coming from a place of just great leadership. As I've been reading articles across the nation about affordable housing crisis, two things I keep saying over and over is that UDAs are, ADUs, sorry, thank you, is the one thing that cities can be able to incorporate into their city codes, along with increasing the density, and you kept hitting that over and over again. But your whole department, like any of the presentations that come forward, are all in sync with that passion that you have. And so thank you for all the hard work of your department. And these presentations really add clarity to your vision and the city council's vision. And feel pretty lucky to be sitting up here to be able to learn about this firsthand and seeing the future for our city. So thank you.
Go ahead, Jay.
One thing I think could help a lot with the with the development of housing in Pasco and increasing the housing stock. I know I've spoken with several developers and contractors about the process here in Pasco, and there's a lot of disappointment in the way it's handled presently. And I'm just letting you know what I heard. I think one of the most effective tools Pasco has is what you call your pre-application meetings, you know, which is a formal meeting, and which I think is really good because it gives the developers and the development team an opportunity to sit with the staff and talk about the issues in the very beginning of a project, and let the issues surface in that meeting, and it becomes a matter of record. So when that pre-application meeting is done, the team, the architects and the engineers and everybody else, they know what the city's concerns are, and they can leave there knowing what they have to do to push this project forward. The complaints I've heard are that what happens is they have this meeting and there's a lot of things discussed and everybody's excited. They leave. They proceed to spend thousands of dollars to develop construction drawings and stuff like that, only to find out later that the city changes they changed the rules from what the meeting was, and it just blows a hole right in the process, and causes a lot of extra time and a lot of extra costs. And I've heard, anyway, so I just want to encourage that, you know, a pre-application meeting is a great tool for everybody to move these projects forward. So I want to encourage that to continue to be in place, and maybe we can work a little bit to allow it to be a little more user friendly in terms of moving a project along, and not yanking a rug out from underneath the team, and work together to get that project moving. Anyway, the concerns were that it just added an inordinate amount of time and money and costs to a project when they were trying to not have that happen in the beginning. That's why they had the pre-application meeting. But anyway, FYI, I think it's a great process. Just need to refine it a little bit, I think.
Certainly, and I'll take a little bit of time to kind of address those comments. 'Cause I think what I will say is that staff certainly, our goal here is to facilitate customers and the ideas and the applications that come to our office on a daily basis, multiple times per hour. And our intent is we only have one set of rules. And so we hear that quite a bit in terms of the rules are changing. Well, we really only have one set of rules, and that's the Pasco Municipal Code. And I think what we're experiencing right now is, and what we have been experiencing for several years, and what we likely will experience for several years into the future, is just the rapid increase of activity that we will see here at the city of Pasco in terms of the development. We're one of the fastest growing cities in the Pacific Northwest, and so as everything else kept up with that, I know that there's a sentiment about the length of time it takes to get projects completed. That argument's kind of the same no matter what community you go to. We are working on providing the data to the Planning Commission and the City Council before the end of the year, where we can demonstrate to our key stakeholders and to our community members and to the Planning Commission and Council about what does it actually take, what is the length of duration between an application coming into the City of Pasco and then the numerous revisions that may be required to ensure compliance, not only with the Pasco Municipal Code, but certainly alignment with council goals and aligning with the input and the concerns that we receive from the community members. And so I think what you're seeing now is a more comprehensive review of project applications, and for some that may be perceived as headache and yanking the rug out, I guess, to use this term, Commissioner Hendler. But certainly staff's intent is to facilitate positive community development in the city of Pasco. That is our expectation, and that's what we intend to do. But I think what you're seeing now is just a more thoughtful review of the projects to ensure that when they're finally done, we can minimize or eliminate the mistakes that many of the residents today we hear from aren't happy about, streets that maybe don't have the sidewalks, streets that don't have lights, neighborhoods that aren't connected to the surrounding commercial services and things of that matters of that nature. So it really is just a more comprehensive approach, I think, being taken the intent of staff currently here at the City of Pasco. But certainly refinement, revisions, wherever we can make things easier to both administer the municipal code to make life a little bit easier for both us and the applicant is certainly one of our top priorities as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or feedback? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm excited about the next meeting. It sounds like it's going to be a really good one and a lot of good information we're going to go through. In doing so, I looked at my schedule to see if I'm available, and either my phone's wrong or that's wrong in everything we've had tonight. 17th, right? Okay. We've had the 18th up there multiple times tonight, saying that's our next meeting in different presentations, and I just wanted to clarify it's the 17th, right?
It's the third Thursday.
It's not me. It's okay.
August 17th.
I thought it was my phone
apologies.
messed up for a minute. I was like,
I have it as
okay.
17th.
Thank you. All right.
17.
All right. Anything else on this? Otherwise, is there any folks that want to speak on this in public hearing? I guess we have to open it up for public hearing. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and state your name and city of address.
Peter Harpster with Octera Engineering. Address is 2815 St. Andrews Loop, Suite C here in Pasco. We are members of the development community that have been attending these workshops that Director Gonzalez has been hosting, and work with several different developers building communities both in the city and in Franklin County. And I also sit on the Franklin County Planning Commission, and the developments that we do in the county, we can only go so small in the lots, 1 acres, pretty much as small as we can go. And so with those projects, we're not really addressing the housing crisis that exists today. And so we're definitely in favor of this action plan, and benefits a lot of different groups. The developers, of course, build more products. Residents as well that may not be able to afford a 1 acre lot with a $700,000 house out in North Pasco, but can buy a 3,000 square foot lot, and it's a great entry level home. We're working with the nation's largest home builder, and just today platted the first phase of a multi-phase project south of Burns Road in the Broadmoor area that eventually at full build will have 224 homes that really were designed for entry level home buyers. One comment that I think maybe would be helpful, or maybe I'm just ignorant. Strategy 4 mentions special population groups, and then Strategy 5 mentions vulnerable residents. And maybe it's just me. I don't know the difference, and it may be helpful to define those differences. I think there's certainly a lot of overlap, but it would be helpful to know exactly which groups are impacted or benefited between those two. And then just the last comment, there's along with the housing crisis, there's a staffing shortage for lots of industries, including, I think, planning and engineering. And but one comment would just be that we move through this process and adoption of this plan quickly. That way, people who desperately need housing can get it sooner. And one thing that this conversation brings to mind is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It's a concept in psychology that for people to become their best selves, they need adequate housing, and lots of other things. And there's a pyramid. At the top is becoming your best self, being a contributing member of society. At the bottom of that pyramid, one of the very first needs that people need met is adequate housing. And so the sooner we can pass this through, the sooner we can remove some of those barriers to provide a variety of housing types. The sooner we can get people in housing, they can become contributing members of society when that housing is taken care of. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for? No? Well, thank you for being here. Are there any others here to speak on this item for the public hearing? Well, make one final call for 3 times. Anyone else for public hearing comments? Right, hearing none. I think we will close the public hearing then. And the next actions for this, so we come back in August 17th with the final and basically a recommendation from us to go to City Council for approval. Is that?
That is correct. August 17th, we'll host another public hearing to give community members another chance to provide their thoughts and guidance on where we're headed with the Housing Action and Implementation Plan. By Monday, we should have the draft up on the city's housing page website. We'll share that electronically, obviously, with our key stakeholder groups that we've been working with, and obviously with the commission and council. And any input that or guidance, or if you have questions in between now and the 17th, and obviously after, it's okay too, that we can address. I certainly would be able to provide that within the changes to the draft plan.
Excellent, thank you. Well, with that, we'll move on from the public hearing to workshop items, or actually we have no workshop, we have a number of other business items. So the first is the National League of Cities presentation.
Yes, good evening again, mayors and members of the Planning Commission. I'm really excited to pass this presentation on to Development Service Lead Jessica Bracken and our Community Resource Specialist Gina Vasquez, who will present on our effort associated with the National League of Cities 2022 Mayors Institute. So take it away.
Hello again, Jessica Bracken. Like CED Director Jacob Gonzalez was saying, that several staff members were participated in the National League of Cities, which is a program that is under the National League of Cities. It is the Mayor's Institute. It is a year-long program, and it ourselves, along with 4 other communities, were chosen. And I think we may have shared a little bit about this program before. Yep. Okay. So you guys are familiar. And so the other cities that were included in this program this year were, of course, Pasco, East Point, Georgia, Mount Vernon, New York, Gresham, Oregon, just not too far from us, Houston, and Houston, Texas. And our team included Jacob, myself, Gina, Jerry Martinez, the executive director for the Downtown Pasco Development Authority, and Adam Lincoln, our city manager, and of course Mayor Barajas. So this plan, the goal of the plan is to address inequalities and health disparities, focusing on tools of infrastructure planning, zoning, and the built environment. You can hold on one second. And we did a convening down in Houston, Texas in May of this year. And that included a few days of presentations that were produced by the staffing team, and then also lots of very intensive participation that was guided by the resources of the National League of Cities. So part of our presentation was, yes, go ahead. So these are excerpts from the presentation that Pasco developed and shared with the other cities down in Houston. So the vision that was developed over the last several months in the first half of this year was to have Pasco be a place where each resident feels that they belong, are empowered, and have a sense of pride in their community. And we were kind of trying to expand on that. So all of our initiatives kind of started to coalesce around those 3 words and the categories that they fit in. So belonging is just generally feeling happy or comfortable as a part of a particular group, feeling welcomed, accepted, valued, and the ability to feel part of a place. Empowerment is feeling of authority and self-determinations in the happenings of a community. The equitable ability to represent and share interests or opinions while being respected, improves well-being by reducing the sense of powerlessness and hopelessness. And finally, pride is the feeling that Pasco is a uniquely special place with qualities worth celebrating and admiring. Basically, the bragging rights of being a Pasco resident. Specifically, although we think a lot of what we developed, of course, expands the whole region for Pasco, we focused on Central Pasco was the focus of this initiative. because it's our historic and cultural center. It's a quarter of our residents. It's our most diverse and oldest housing stock. It is a culturally diverse business center, and it has the best version of access and street grid.
And hi, Gina Vasquez, Community Resource Specialist. And I'd just like to add, as you saw in the previous presentation on the Housing Action Plan, Central Pasco is one of the areas that is highly at risk for displacement as we're growing. So we thought it was very important that we do focus on this area because we want to make sure that the city is being equitably developed and that we're focusing on all residents, not just on the areas that are new and up and coming, but taking care of all of our residents.
Yeah, and Central Pasco is where so many of our community events are held. So if we can improve Central Pasco, it benefits every resident in Pasco. So one of the things that came out of our work and some of the feedback we got from the other communities and from that are involved with the National League of Cities and the resources at National League of Cities directly is that we have so much work in progress that is really allowing us to build a momentum towards making some big strides. And a lot of this is stuff that you are very familiar with. We have lots of plans, including the Downtown Master Plan, the Housing Action and Implementation Plan, which you just heard about, the implementation efforts that came out of the Downtown Master Plan, and our other management projects in downtown. We've talked about code updates with housing and the newly established overlay district, which eliminates off-street parking requirements and caps on residential density. Good. And we have lots of infrastructure improvements that are either complete, nearly complete, or in planning stages. Peanuts Park, of course, the Lewis Street overpass, which we actually heard about a little bit earlier today, which led into the Lewis Street corridor improvements that are planned. Sylvester Street was mentioned earlier today, the Festival Street at 4th Avenue, and also Columbia and Clark improvements. Those are all in planning and a part of the downtown master plan. We have been fortunate to receive some grants and to be able to do some additional studies. Do you want to talk about the first grant a little bit?
Yes, so the Recreation Department is currently leading a recreation equity study. They have been meeting with stakeholders the last week or so and plan to get this study out to the public in the next few weeks, hopefully by the end of the month. But what this study is doing is reaching out to residents and kids and underserved populations, specifically youth, and find out how they can better serve them to continue activating these spaces and making sure that everybody is equitably getting access to the various programs that our recreation department puts on. So we're talking about girls, LGBTQIA community, minorities, as well as just any underrepresented group. And the next one is Thunderbird Motel Reuse Study. We actually have some really great, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so we are working on the Thunderbird Reuse Study, which was a grant that we received to take further look. This was started to be looked at under the Downtown Master Plan. Of course, we all know that we purchased the Thunderbird Motel and had it demolished and abated, and now we're looking at what we can do next, and we're looking at both short-term and long-term solutions for that. And some of the pictures you see on the screen are some early renderings. We just received some 3D renderings as well that show a little bit more of the massing of the building as opposed to just plan views of the buildings, but that shows some of the examples of the things that we are working towards. The biggest, one of the things that really strikes me about this opportunity is how close it is. It's literally just catty corner to the Peanuts Park. It's so close. So if this comes along, it'll be just another great addition to the downtown area. And then actually go back one. Yeah, perfect. Another focus is communications. We've added some staff and things for communications, and a big part of that is just focusing on, we're doing so much great work, we're having so much momentum, how do we make sure that the community is aware of it?
So actually, I am one of the communications team staff, and we have been working really hard to get the message out and just talk about what we're doing. Because as you can see, we are doing a lot. But unless you attend one of these meetings or watch it on Facebook, you don't really know what's going on. And that's not even talking about the language barrier. So just communicating better with our residents, because you don't know what you don't know. And part of making somebody feel like they belong is that they feel that they have autonomy to say what they want and know who to go to, and just feeling like the place belongs to them. Like, this is their city too. It's not just, we're not just taking their money, and it's not just taxes that you pay, but it's somewhere that you enjoy being. And we're also working, on the downtown master plan. So that's going to be a huge, huge part of the work that we're doing with NLC. So I think the most developed part of that right now is the mural code amendments, which is coming up to council pretty soon. Let me see. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more about some of those things we were talking about. What are the assets we have? We have a lot of focus on the downtown area right now. The planning efforts we talked about, the supportive and forward thinking of administration and council, which is leading to all that momentum to see how things can change. Some of the challenges we identified are, we have some great facilities. A lot of times they're underutilized. How do we get them to be utilized more often? Because that helps with that kind of belonging effort. If there's things going on that you feel like you can join, if there's always something happening at Peanuts Park or the other parks, there's things to join. Some of the other facilities we talked about, the Y, all those things that kind of contribute to that sense of belonging. And how do we, another challenge that was identified is that just getting that participation from community engagement. How do we as staff encourage that participation and lower the barriers to having live participation, like Gina was talking about? Like, it's hard to have community come to these meetings. There's got, how do we open up to have broader methods of participation? And always funding. We have some different code items that we'll talk about too that have had restrictions on possible programming and also public art. So you want to talk about the opportunities?
Yeah, so placemaking and beautification. As you can see, there is a lot going on, and all three of those efforts are kind of going on at the same time and building off of one another. And like I mentioned, mural and art program is next on the agenda at council. So stay tuned, 7 p.m. on Monday. But what we're doing is we're working with Framework, which is the consulting team that created the downtown master plan. And they're helping us do code amendments. So they've drafted language. They've also helped with structuring a public mural program and just lowering the barriers for private murals. Because art is something that's central. It's just a part of human culture, and it's really a need. And as we're growing so rapidly, our needs change, and we have to kind of cater to this wider variety of our population. And we also want to make sure that they're happy and that they enjoy the place that they live, and that they identify with it, and that they're proud of it. So what better way than to kind of lead by example and activate our own spaces and also beautify them with art. And it might make somebody want to go take a stroll through Peanuts Park or hang out in downtown. And it's also a huge economic booster, because there's plenty of documentation to show that art is it's an asset to communities, because it is an economic it creates economic opportunity. And I'm really excited to hopefully see some art soon, and we'll keep you updated on that. But also developing methods of low barrier and live community input. So that's just going back to, not everybody has the same availability. So how can we engage our residents and lower the barriers for them to have their voice heard. And another opportunity is increasing programming of parks and public spaces, which will tie in really well with the current recreation equity study. So whatever data we get from that will hopefully inform how it is that we're using our public spaces and our public parks and can increase the use of them for wider audiences. And code updates, which you're very familiar with, and it will cover a variety of things.
So to sum it up, the overall goal is that activated community, a community that you feel like you belong, that you can participate in, that you have pride in, and all those really relate to, everything is so interconnected. The art program is showing not only an interesting space, but a space that people care about, that, you know, can boost that public pride. It makes you want to go visit there. It doesn't even have to be that other people are there to participate in. That'll draw people in on their own. It doesn't have to be a kind of planned program. All of those things kind of tie together to be a place that is activated, that feels lively, that in a community that people think that they can participate in. This is some of the snapshots from the downtown, the Pasco downtown plan. And it's talking about that placemaking and activation again. Again, these are places that I think if we see more of, the more and more you want to visit them, you'll be there, you know, every weekend, every Tuesday, where there's always something going on that you can be a part of, and it's a lively community. So that's the summary. That belonging is that a sense of activation and beautification of the parks and public places. The empowerment is that facilitation of authentic public engagement that can be live and simple. As you think of something, you're able to kind of share your opinions and be heard. And then the pride is the sharing of our story and celebrating our wins. And this is our kind of the next steps that we'll be working on. So this was started at the convening with part of the guided participation that we were talking about. Our next step is to fully develop the shared action roadmap. This is just a draft with some spaces that are hold. We actually have our next meeting tomorrow. So we will all be participating in that. And then, yeah, we have some photos from live down in Houston and the things that we participated in. And again, you know, we were both obviously participations. Jacob was a participant as well and continues to be, as this program will extend through the end of the year. I don't know if Jacob, if you have other comments that you want to include with that we've experienced.
Yeah, I guess just shortly, I think what the initial effort to both apply, participate, be accepted, and then be a part of this effort with National League of Cities, I think what it's really done is expose staff to certainly a wealth of resources that we typically aren't exposed to when we're talking about national resources and funders included, which is obviously a big thing for us. I think in general, what we're trying to do is align everything, as Commissioner Lerman mentioned, from our community development block grant funding to the work that's being done by our inspection services team to keep our community safe for all of our residents, to the work being done in planning and engineering to make sure that we're accommodating the residents that are here today without forgetting about the residents that will soon call Pasco home and love to call Pasco home. And I think more than anything is just embracing all of the recent planning efforts, code amendments, adoptions, policy goals, et cetera, and then beginning to sort of strategize, which is we've got all these really great plans, and where do we start? And I think this participation with National League of Cities, with different staff members, has really sort of forced us to think a lot differently about what we can do to make Pasco a place that we're all even more proud to call home and do business in. So really appreciate the presentation from our key staff today, and look forward to collaborating with various other staff and departments and then leading to community outreach in the near future. But certainly we'll love input, questions, comments from the Planning Commission as well.
So Commissioner Moffitt here. First of all, I agree with you on the art. My wife and I drove to Walla Walla just to do the sculpture drive. So if you can get it listed, once you get it done, progress on TripAdvisor. That's how we found about it. It was great. The other thing that helps me with what's going on in Pasco, and I would assume you're it or a part of it, would be that I get text messages all the time about what's up Pasco, something like that. Is that part of you?
Yes, maybe What's Up Pasco.
Something like that. Yeah. That's
So we do have a text messaging platform that we use to send out alerts and also just letting residents know of important notices.
Yeah,
So-
I get it. I get them almost daily that, like this is going on or this is going on here. You can come do a part of this. And what I would say is I appreciate those if that's you, and if it's not you, I still appreciate them. But the one thing that is kind of for lack of a better term, annoying with it is all of them come at once. So I'll get like 4 or 5 texts at one time, one after another. And where if you could space them out, it would be much more enjoyable, because if that one doesn't apply to me, I can skip it. And then, 20, 30 minutes later, I get another one or something like that. But usually I get them all at one time. And so just my input on that. But I really do like that option to get text messages, because I don't have time to go to everybody's Facebook and look at it. And I just really don't have time. So, but with a text message coming across my phone, it's easy. It takes a half a second, so.
We do have a text messaging system, but I will have to get back to you on whether the one that sends daily updates is out there, because we typically only use ours for pertinent notices. So I will get back to you on that one.
All right, I can pull it up too. So.
Yeah, it might be a different platform.
Might be.
Thanks.
Other questions or feedback? Go ahead.
Did it feel pretty validating how hard you guys have been working, and to be able to hear from other cities like, wow, you guys are doing that and this is going forward, and that's awesome. I could hear once again the passion in your presentation, and so thank you for sharing that passion and the good work you guys do. As you guys talked about interconnectivity, I was thinking of ways that city residents can be able to be connected at a variety of ages, from Pasco School District, sharing out maybe a portion on their website, ways to be able to get youth involved to be able to learn about survey opportunities, or ways to be able to share out their voice. And the school district also has an app too, and so those notifications possibly can come out too, as often parents are picking and choosing what time they have to be able to dedicate to keeping up with important information out there. They might choose their student's life, school life, over what's going on in the city. Now you can be able to possibly merge both of them. And then to another generation, the PUD bills. I know in the past that when levies and bonds came out, that sometimes there would be a little message, don't forget to vote. So there might be opportunities there on those paper bills for those that still open them up, read them. So, and then also maybe on the emails too that come out. So just opportunities for connecting citizens back to the good work you guys are doing.
Yeah, I think that actually touches on a point that we didn't really cover in our presentation, was talking about the partnerships that we would need to levy. This is there's a lot of great work to be done, but it's not only work that happens within the walls of this building. And so it's leveraging the community partners is a very important tool. We can be much more effective and get more done if we are working together, just like the school districts you mentioned and other organizations. Do you have additional?
Oh, no, you go ahead. Yeah.
I had a question, or I'm not sure if it's a question or feedback. First of all, I love the art investment as well. One of the things about art, though, is it can be wonderful and also very controversial. And so, and it's maybe just that I don't know. How are we governing art in the city of Pasco? And I know, like other cities, I know like Kennewick and Richland have like an city arts commission that says, well, you can't just bring your spray can and do anything. We're going to review it first, and we're going to assess whether it's a fit and it's diverse and it has diverse representation in the arts committee. Do we have a similar mechanism in our program that just governs our art a little bit?
So I actually work with the Arts Commission. We do have the Pasco Arts and Culture Commission, and public art will be governed. So the public art program that Framework has drafted for us includes an approval process where we want to fund art that directly aligns with the values of our community. And that's what we want to fund and that's what we want to see. But that would only be public art, and private art would be not completely unregulated, but we would not be able to dictate what the content of it was. Obviously, no nudity or nothing vulgar because we want it to be safe for families, but dictating what the content of art is can get very messy very quick, and then you get into First Amendment issues. But we will absolutely have a process for public art, and we are actually also working on a public art policy when it comes to art pieces, so like sculptures, say, because we recently selected an artist to create the Peanuts statue that will be placed in Peanuts Park Plaza. And out of that project, we saw a need to create a policy to maintain the art because it is an investment, and we want to make sure that we are taking care of it properly and making sure that we have some structure in place to continue getting art, because it's not something that we just want to rush into, but we want to do intentionally and also make sure that it lasts and creates other opportunities for interested artists.
Yeah, thank you. That's great to know. I mean, we live in a world where, you know, one person's vulgar is another person's beauty. So we have to have some diverse stakeholder group that says we think this is acceptable. So, and even I mean, that's what we're doing on the private. We're even trying to address that with the murals code and stuff, right? Too. That's part of it too. Is just have a reasonable code that says, hey, let's find a diverse perspective of how to balance this so that we try to offend as least many people as we can. So, thank you.
Yeah, you know, speaking from experience, a lot of experience, you know, it's very difficult to legislate art. And I've always found that the best art is controversial. Some people like it, some people don't. And that's what you have to kind of tread a little bit. And you know, if everybody liked it, it's going to fail. And so good art will cause people to talk and learn about art, you know. And so anyway, I encourage you to be open-minded and let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very valuable. So in early June, the Arts and Culture Commission had held a small workshop just to talk about murals and talk about the downtown master plan implementation and specifically the arts aspects of it and what action steps we could take immediately. Like, what was the low-hanging fruit and how can we get art into downtown ASAP? And somebody floated the idea of maybe doing mural themes. And Jacob made a very good point. He said that the best art is spontaneous. That's kind of the best part of it. It's that there's a variety of it. There's going to be different styles. It's not governed by just one aesthetic, but it's a little bit of everything, and it makes it more enjoyable. So thank you for that.
And that has been some of our conversations that we've had too, is like kind of balancing that. We want to be smart with the investments we make and the policies we create, but also kind of leveraging those risks and reward kind of scenario. Instead of worrying about every risk that could ever possibly occur, let's see how we go and see what comes of it, and kind of be adaptable from there. Like, let's get going so that we can see where we are. And sometimes the risks we worry about the most turn out to be not the ones that occur.
Excellent. Any other? Go ahead.
Back to what Gina was saying, plus the opportunity is to be more inclusive too, where if you tailor it to just one style, then it may possibly nod to just one culture or one time period. And so, yeah, great points.
All right. No other questions or feedback. Thank you for your presentation. And we have next on the other business is the comprehensive plan amendment docket update.
Good evening again, members of the Planning Commission. Just a quick update on where we're at with the 2023 docket for comp plan amendments. The application period ran from early January through early May. The city held 2 pre-application meetings with 2 prospective applicants. One actually submitted an application and received the determination of completeness, so their application will move on to the first level, which is essentially establishing which items the planning commission and then council would like planning staff to evaluate for an amendment into the comp plan. That's the step 1 of 2 process. You're very familiar with this. I'm happy to share that we don't have the significant amount of amendments that we experienced in 2022. Knocked a lot of those out. We do have one from last year that would be carryover into this year, so we do have 2 to look at this year. So we'll come back in August and September and October with these items for Planning Commission review. But just a quick status of where we're at as that application process wrapped up.
Great. So 2 instead of 18 is always nice, or whatever it was. Now, so are 2 external, or are the 2 one from the city and 1 external?
2 private.
2 private. Okay. Any other questions on that? Excellent. Well, we can move on to the final other business item, which is recreational vehicle and equipment parking.
Yep, and this is just a brief memorandum from staff led by our inspection services team, where the city of Pasco has several regulations, as this commission is aware about. One in particular regulates where and how the storage of recreational vehicles can be done throughout the various zoning districts and residential areas of the city. The Code Division and the Pasco Police Department receive over 300 documented complaints on an annual basis about recreational vehicles and equipment parking. In particular, these are complaints about exceeding the 72-hour parking limit on public streets, obstructing views of driveways and pedestrians, blocking sidewalks, driving over utilities and neighborhood aesthetics, etc. Staff's been contacted for probably well over a year for sure about the interest from community members to amend the code. I think similar to Commissioner Hendler's comment from the previous application, if our code is perfect and everybody liked it, it would fail. And I think this code, a potential revision to the Pasco Municipal Code, is very similar to the fence one, if you recall that from last year. And what staff is trying to do is one, let the Planning Commission know that we are receiving interest from community members to amend the code, both to address the complaints that they are receiving from other community members and also about the complaints they're making themselves, kind of a 50-50 split perhaps. We do have 2 of our staff members here to address any specific questions if you have about the nature of those complaints and the potential consequences they may have. But essentially staff is just seeking some guidance from the Planning Commission on, is this an effort that you would like staff to pursue? And if so, is this something that is a priority above some of our other work planning items, or is this one that the current regulations certainly accommodate? There's just some complaints about it. But if there is an interest in pursuing an amendment, where you would like that to fall in terms of our overall work plan over the next year or so. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think it's great that we are being proactive, because there's RVs in many cities like Seattle are a big issue, right? And so it's probably good to stay in front of it and just evaluate what needs to be done. So kind of lay this out. It would be just an update to existing codes, just to review based on the complaints and feedback you're getting? Is that what the approach would be?
It could be, and maybe if I can call Rosanna to the podium again, if you don't mind. Rosanna's our lead code officer and can provide a little bit more specifics about the nature of the calls we're getting.
You get all the complaints then.
Get all the complaints. So every summer we get complaints about recreational vehicles, whether they're parked on the property in an appropriate manner in violation of the code, or if they're on the street. The street is predominantly handled by police, but we still get the complaints that come through there often as well. Most of the complaints have to do with them parking on the street over the 72-hour limit, obstructing views of pedestrians, especially children playing during the summer. We get a lot of kids out on the sidewalks, on the streets. You can't see them around these RVs, or they're parked too close to the hydrants or stop signs. Additionally, some people put their tip outs. They have them open, or they're cleaning them on the street, extending water hoses, electrical lines, other things across the sidewalk. So if you're needing ADA access, you can't get through easily, even moms pushing strollers. On the private property side, a lot of the residents, what we've heard from them is that it costs a lot of money to have something in storage. They have to travel to the storage site to pick up their item. Say it's their RV, bring it back to their property, load it within that 72 hours, go out, have their trip, bring it back, unload it, clean it, and take it back again to the storage place. Some of the vehicles need to be level because of the refrigerators. They have to have them plugged in because of batteries on the RVs themselves. And then security in these storage places. The ones that are less expensive, unfortunately, in some cases, what I'm being told is that they have a lot of break-ins, so people are not feeling comfortable and safe putting their expensive recreational equipment in those areas. And I would say that we get complaints on both sides every single year. And usually we'll try to send a postcard to let people know this is where you can and can't park. And we get pushback because in the R1 zones, you can park in your driveway, or you can park it in your side yard or rear yard. You have access to all areas of your property, but in the RS zones, you cannot park it in your front yard setback at all. So it has to be in your side yard or your rear yard. A lot of the recent complaints we've had are from neighborhoods where their side yard setbacks are only 5 feet to 10 feet. They don't have enough space to be able to get recreational vehicles back there, or there's utility boxes that are blocking their access to be able to drive or create additional parking next to their driveway. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Go ahead, Jay.
Is there a time limit that you can have your RV parked on the street?
On the street, it's 72 hours for loading and unloading only.
Say again?
72 hours for loading and unloading.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can't just store it there, but if you're actively going on a trip, then
I
it's
see, and then
permissible.
after 72 hours, you gotta take it someplace,
Yeah.
right?
So if you can't store it on your property in an acceptable place per the code, then you have to take it back to your storage
Yeah.
area.
Sounds good. Have you done, I'm sure you've done, have you looked into other cities and what they're doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
It varies city to city. Every city has their own problems. Every city has a very different
Right.
code from the other. Even our development standards, the new codes that are coming in for how we're going to develop new properties with smaller lot coverage, even that can affect how we do it. Not every city has that kind of zoning either.
So I guess the bottom line is we want to continue to look into this, right? Is the
Yeah, I
question.
think it's more about, you're asking about priority, right?
Yeah, certainly. I think we can go numerous directions with this. I think staff would just like a little bit of direction from the Planning Commission about where you see this fitting in terms of the overall work plan and the list of amendments and planning efforts that we have coming your direction over the rest of the year and in early 2024 as well.
I think what might help with that is if we knew the numbers of complaints, right? Because you said there's complaints and you said there's complaints, but there's complaints can mean 1, 2, 3, 100, 10,000. You know, if we knew the numbers, maybe even a graph of how they've changed. And I realize it might take some time to do that, but maybe the next meeting, if we have some numbers to go with, it might let us prioritize it in their proper place.
Well, this said 300. Is that per year? Yeah, that's per year.
The 300 is documented complaints for what I have access to between our department and police. Sometimes we get a complaint that says they're all over my neighborhood in every single driveway. So the complaints system that we have doesn't necessarily capture that. It would be captured through the code cases actually initiated. It would take a little more time to get all of that information, but I'm sure we could.
One thing that's interesting about this, if you live in a homeowners association, it's even more severe, and they'll start fining residents and homeowners associations. So I think people sometimes should be thankful they're not in a homeowners association, because they're even more strict, right? If you live up on Westcliff, for example, which I don't, but it's pretty severe if you start getting monthly fines for parking your RV. So I think we're pretty gracious as a city, it seems. But it seems like there's an opportunity to, based on the complaints we're getting, to assess options. And then, in terms of it, is it the highest priority? I don't know that we're saying that. It's probably maybe medium, but however staff feels it fits into the priorities of what you have seems like a reasonable thing. And like I said to start, is like, it's always good to be proactive before we get into worse issues. And, some of it is part of it assessing how much of it is the city's problem versus the residents' problem, and that balance of, well, if your storage place isn't secure, get a new storage place, right? Some of that stuff is that balance of whose responsibility is it, right? And so, is that generally kind of the guidance for staff? Go ahead.
Yeah, and then also, I just maybe a question or maybe something to think about as well is like, would this also address, kind of the issue of having like RVs that, are causing kind of maybe like more like aren't being used, that aren't necessarily owned by somebody in the city, but they're kind of out on the street and they're being used for other
Occupied
purposes.
RVs?
Yeah.
This would not address that. This is strictly regarding zoning codes for parking and storage of recreational equipment. Occupied RVs is governed by court rulings right now. And so that's in discussion elsewhere.
That's Seattle's problem.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought of. So, okay, thanks.
Yeah, my feedback is I think this is something that we obviously have to look into. I do see that just even in my neighborhood and the other neighbors that I visit, it is uptick in the summer. It seems like it's right about spring break. They start bringing them out, and then you start seeing it all over the place by summer. So just timeline, I'm thinking maybe early 2024. So it would be a good time. Maybe we get something in by summer. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, staff can certainly take this feedback from this meeting tonight, and we'll go back and do some homework about more of the statistics that we can collect on our own complaints, how we apply, how our code is administered, and begin to come up maybe in late 2023 and early 2024, at least maybe some options for us to look at. Do we want to be more lenient in some aspects? What are the consequences of that? Do we want to be more stringent? And what are the consequences of that based on whoever the community member might be? And then coordinate that with the various department staff that are impacted by this decision, and come back to the Planning Commission with some general options and an evaluation back in early 2024. Certainly is doable for us.
Good question. Okay.
Yeah, I would just say, just want to echo that. I think that's probably the wise and comfortable West First to do, just because it is a summer, it seems to be a summer issue. And then, so yeah, I think that's a beautiful timeline to have.
Can they park them in their driveway?
Only in the R1 zone.
Only in the R1 zone.
Right. So anything that, I think the original intention was that if you have a larger property, you have more room in your side and rear yard to park them out of sight. So if you're in an RS zone, you cannot park it in your driveway.
And with your department, when it comes to that parking in that aspect, or even on the street over 72 hours, you're more reactive or you're proactive?
We're reactive. If we get a complaint, then we go out there to address it. Is not on our highest priority levels at this point in time. During the summer, it's mostly fire hazards that we're looking at.
I understand.
So is business trailers also follow the same rules as the recreational vehicle codes right now?
They do in essence. We also have a home occupation code. So if you have a home occupation license in the city of Pasco, you're only allowed one occupational vehicle, which is either, the vehicle you drive or a trailer. So that trailer that you have for your business has to comply by those same zoning codes for equipment parking.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
It does. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's kind of another question brewing, but I don't think I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, it goes to scope, right, is also part of this is what is considered a recreational vehicle that would be covered, right? Because is it Sea-Doos, is it boats, is it business trailers? It's like scoping that to say what is in scope and what's out of scope. It's not occupied vehicles, and really defining that well so that there's a scope that you're addressing. Because I think, it depends on what you call a recreational vehicle, I guess, so. Anything else on this one? Did you have something else, Jacob? Okay, thank you. Well, that was the last item on our agenda. Are there any other business or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
I second.
Awesome. It's been moved and seconded. The meeting is adjourned at 9:19 p.m. Thank you.